He's a board-certified obstetrician, gynecologist, and a fellow of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, with office in Greenbelt and Silver Spring, Maryland. He is affiliated with Washington Adventist Hospital, now White Oak Medical Center, where he had been a past chairman of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. He had also been affiliated with multiple other hospitals in Washington metropolitan area as an attending physician, including Innovo Alexandria Hospital, Holy Cross Hospital, Doctors Community Hospital, Howard County General Hospital, Laurel Regional Hospital, and University of Maryland, Capitol Health, Prince George's Hospital Center. He is an experienced medical practitioner with a demonstrated history of working in the healthcare industry in various capacities. Skilled in gynecology, a qualified expert in the treatment of uterine fibroids, team building, public speaking, business management, healthcare infrastructure development, teaching, mentoring, and social activism. Dr. Olupaje has contributed immensely to healthcare advancement in Nigeria, evident through his trade and humanitarian mission to Osun, Ondo, Lagos, and Oyo states. He belonged to several civic, healthcare, and philanthropic organizations, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Alliance of Yoruba Organizations, Global Medical Organization, and the Osun Indigenes Organization, where he is currently the chairman of the Medical Mission Committee. Dr. Lupaje received his bachelor's degree from Western Maryland College, now McDonnell University, a Master's of Science degree from Howard University, Doctor of Medicine degree from Howard University College of Medicine, and his training in obstetrics and gynecology from Howard University Hospital, and has been in practice for more than 25 years. Please, let us welcome Dr. Olupaje. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It seems like you use all the time that I'm going to speak to introduce me. Is it not? You know, I was wondering whether you were talking about me or somebody else. But I really appreciate that. You know, I mean, that's who I am, and that's why I'm here this morning, to give a little bit of my time and my expertise in educating, you know, and to share in the fellowship today. I don't know whether we have a PowerPoint, but it's a good thing I brought some papers. Yeah. Okay, so my topic this morning, you know, I know because we have a lot of things to do today, including that I'm on my way to a funeral. Also, once I leave here, that's why I'm talking first. I was not supposed to be on the first person to speak, but thanks to Mr. Obasi, that allowed me to be the one so I can be on my way to the funeral, which is already starting. But the topic for this morning is basically about wellness, you know, wellness checkups, you know, the annual wellness that we all hear about so much, you know, but that many of us don't do. Many of us don't partake. And, you know, even though we get it, you know, knock into our heads from everywhere to do your annual wellness, your annual checkup. But we also know that many of us don't. And we all know that health is wealth. And without your health, you have nothing. You know, we all get up every day, running up and down, running up and down, by the glory of God, obviously. But it's because we have our health. Many of us are in the medical field, so we know that many of our fellow citizens are not so lucky because they lie in the bed in a prone state and we're taking care of them. It can happen to any one of us, and some of those situations is because people don't do their checkups. The best way to maintain your health is to find out something that's going to go wrong before you actually go wrong or get worse. We take care of things as physicians and nurse practitioners when you come to us early. You know, I mean, I can tell you so many stories of some of my patients who are fighting situations that is really very, you know, heart-wrenching. You know, that to feel like, wow, if you have come to me maybe a few years back, you would not be facing death at this time. You know, these are the realities that we face in the medical field. And as human beings, you have limited time in this world. So without much ado, let's get started. Okay, I'm sure you guys can see also what I'm seeing up there. Excuse me. The components of a wellness check is a once-a-year conversation with a healthcare provider. It's, you're asking a checklist of questions that will help address patients' concerns, vaccination updates and our discussions, performing physical examination and screening tests, reviewing patients' lab results, providing medical counseling, providing follow-up health information and or recommendations. Next. Okay, what I have a little bit on my paper, which is something that you're looking at, is a little bit different. So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. What is a wellness check? It's a yearly assessment of physical. It's also called wellness visit or preventative health appointment. And many of us are in the medical age group, including myself. And Medicare has a different type of wellness check that's different from the regular one that many of you do with your primary care, the younger generation or the younger group. The wellness check for Medicare is slightly different. It differs from the regular wellness check for people with Medicare Part B. It's not a head-to-toe assessment. It is basically meant to develop a personalized health plan. It addresses your current concerns and then also to prevent future problems. What is Medicare? Medicare is a government insurance, you know, government health care for older Americans. I know many of us, as we get older, we hear about Medicare and all these things, but we don't really know exactly what it is. You know, we have Part A, Part B, Part D. Like, what is that? You know, when you get older, it behoves you to know exactly what Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D means. Right, Pastor? Yes. Yes. So you have, you know, Medicare Part A, Part B, Part D, and you know, then you have Medicare Advantage, which is what I have. Medicare Advantage that you hear about is a plan that's offered by Medicare, but it's given to private companies to administer for Medicare. So, for example, you have Medicare, and then you also have the Advantage that's being given through, for example, my private company is care first. So that's Medicare Advantage. That's the common thing. Now, the government cannot do the work alone. So dish it out to all these companies to help them to administer them. And so that's what Medicare Advantage is about.
For a fee.
Pardon me?
For a fee.
Oh, everything's money. Of course, everything's money. It's not that expensive, actually. So given that you've done all this work all your life for America, so it's time for America to take care of you. Not be true?
It's true.
Yes, yes. Then there's Medicare coronavirus coverage. Coronavirus is still here with us, as we know. And so Medicare coronavirus coverage covers items and services related to COVID-19, including FDA-authorized COVID tests and vaccines. Then you have Medicare, Medigap plans. Medigap is Medicare supplement insurance that help to fill the gap in the original Medicare, and is sold by private companies. It's not really around anymore because of Medicare Advantage has taken the place of that. And what is Medicare Compare website? That's where you go, one-stop shop online tool to compare Medicare insurance plans. So that may not apply to you younger people, but when you start getting older, then you need to know about Medicare. You hear about Medicare running out of money, but they still have some money, for maybe another 10 years, 20 years or something. So, all right, next. Now, when you go for your wellness exam, we all know that, once a year, actually, the wellness exam is actually guaranteeing to some extent that you remain well until next year. That's all. You do your checkup, you do all your stuff, and your doctor do the tests and all this and that. And it's basically guaranteeing that until I see you next year, you're fairly okay. So I want to see you again next year. So that year to year, God is in control. We don't know everything. We can make mistakes. But for the most part, if you do that, you're fairly guaranteed a fair amount of, of your health, So that's why they call it annual, wellness. And when you come in there, the doctor would do, basically, of course, we talk to you. The front desk get your information, your insurance card, your demographics. Then they put inside the room, as we all know, they do the vital signs, your blood pressure, your weight, and all that. And then the doctor or the nurse practitioner or the provider comes in to talk to you. Good afternoon, good morning, Pastor Nwadiba, right? Mm-hmm. Nice to see you again today, so you're here for your annual wellness. Okay, so how have you been doing since I saw you last time? And then they go through a checklist, any headaches, any this, any that, have you been hospitalized since your last visit? Any vehicle accidents, any social issues, domestic issues, you have to cover all the bases. All the bases. Nothing is out of bounds. I can ask you any question, I tell my students, you should be able to ask any question. This is not it's confidential, the HIPAA laws and all that. So don't feel that any question is out of rim that you cannot ask a patient. It depends on how you ask them. They say, I cannot ask her that. I cannot ask that lady sexuality because I don't want to offend her. Yeah, it's not offending. It's how you ask. And if you ask a straight, honest question, you will get a straight, honest answer. And it comes with experience, of course. So that's why we teach them and we mentor them. So, then the doctor will examine you, for women. As a gynecologist, we do breast exam. Of course, we check your blood pressure, your heart, your lungs, because we're not just checking breast and private part. We check in the whole person. So I look at your eyes. I tell my students, don't forget to look at the eyes, the nose. They say, but is this a gynecologist? I said, no, that's a human being that we're looking at. So looking at the heart, you know, and then we do the breast exam, we do the pelvic exam, pap smear if it's needed, blah, blah, blah. And then the person, you know, get dressed, and then we go to sit down to say, okay, this is what we found from the exam, you know, and this is what we're going to do. We've done some tests on you. It might take a week or two for the test to come back. So we're going to see you back in 2 or 3 weeks so we can go over all the results. And I'm also going to send you out to do some other tests. And that's what brings us to the next test. These are the tests that is recommended. About 13 of them for men and women as part of the screening to guarantee your health to some extent. Lung cancer is number one. Lung cancer is the number one cause of death in the U.S. Yeah, it's number one cause of death in the U.S. is lung cancer. Of course, we know it's caused by cigarette smoking. You can also from secondhand smoking. You know, I had a friend who died, doesn't smoke, but he had a bar in Baltimore at the time that he ran for many years where people come and smoke, and, you know, that kind of thing. But you think, oh, I'm not smoking. But all that smoke that people are smoking in the air, that's almost like you're smoking even more than they are sometimes. And he just came down with lung cancer. I was like, wow, from nowhere. So secondhand smoking can also cause that. And of course, as we all know, you don't have to smoke. You don't have to be under secondhand smoke. You can just develop lung cancer as well. You know, so it can happen that way too. But more likely, if you smoke 2 packs a day of cigarettes for 40 years, it's almost guaranteed that you might, you know. And, you know, so some tests can be done. Low dose CT scan is recommended, you know, for people who have smoked in the past and stopped smoking or still smoking. A low dose CT scan is recommended for people from age 55 to 80, you know, who have history of smoking and all that. The second one is testicular cancer. Many of us go to our doctors, but nobody talk about the testicles. But it's part of this annual exam. You know, we also teach the patient to do that themselves, you know, check your testes for any lumps, any growths, you know. One should know how your testes feel. If any little growth is coming, you'll be the first person to know, and then you can draw the attention of your doctor to that. So testicular cancer is alive and well. It's very uncommon, you know, but it's there. We hear about prostate, of course. You know, it's the second most common cancer in American men. And it's a very slow-growing cancer, you know, and the testing begins from age 40 to 50. And the examination is a rectal exam, digital rectal exam by the doctor to feed for the prostate, whether it's enlarged or not. And of course, we all hear about the PSA, prostatic prostate-specific antigen test, which if it's going up, then the doctor will keep a better eye on you and tell you to come back to repeat it. And if it's really high, they might do MRI, CT scan of the prostate to see if there's any growth, and then they might recommend biopsy. I have 2 friends who are going through that right now. You know, one actually had the prostate removed. The other one is contemplating whether I should do it or not because of the side effects. And the side effect of removing your prostate is basically that the nerve that regulates erection is right there. So if the doctor know how to do the job with the robot, they can do nerve sparing of that nerve, because once that nerve is cut, you're done. You're done for. You know, so, but what do you prefer, to die or not to die? But so that's prostate. You know, it's very common in black men especially. You know, so anybody here who has not done, who are like 40 and above, who hasn't done their prostate checkup, you know, should please do so. Colon cancer, of course, we all hear about that too. They develop from polyps. growth in the colon, and that's why from age 50 or so, you have to do your colonoscopy, where they look at the entire colon, and if you see a polyp, they will remove them, and all that. And they tell you, they test it, if it's benign, they tell you come back in 5 years or 10 years, depending upon your risk factor or what they find, your family history of colon cancer, blah, blah, blah. So colon cancer is alive and well. And so that's another screen test. So that's 4 tests we've mentioned. Then you have skin cancer. Skin cancer is the #1 cancer in the U.S. And it's due to sun exposure, tanning, all those. So you have a mole. If your mole is getting bigger, it's changing color, whatever, don't ignore it. So go and see the dermatologist so they can scrape it or do a test. You know those type: melanoma, basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma of the skin. So that is something to be aware of. Don't assume that it's only in white people. It can happen in black people as well. High blood pressure, of course. Like I always say, if you are a black person, right, and you're 40 and above, right, and you say you don't have high blood pressure, right, it's because you haven't checked it. You hear what I said? You're a black person, you're 40 and above, and I ask you, do you have high blood pressure? You said, no, I don't. That's because you haven't checked. So that's how common it is. And we know it's a common cause of stroke, heart problems and all that. So because you feel good, don't assume that your blood pressure is normal. No, you don't. Many times you don't feel nothing. It's also cause kidney failure and all this stuff, apart from diabetes. We know people are falling down right and left from stroke, back home, here, everywhere. And why? Because of uncontrolled hypertension. So please, do the checkup for your cholesterol. It's always known, it's often called the silent killer.
So people are listening online?
Oh, so speak. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. Could I start all over? Sorry, guys. Cholesterol. Cholesterol is called the silent killer. We all hear about cholesterol all the time, and there's low LDL, low density lipoprotein, which is the bad one that can clog your arteries, and of course the high density lipoprotein, which is a good one. So, and of course, if your cholesterol is high, the doctor is going to tell you about your diet and all that, and of course we have all these statins that we all take: atorvastatin, some statin. I take mine, and it helps to lower your cholesterol. So cholesterol is another thing that we screen for. So that's about 7 so far. And diabetes, of course. The combination of diabetes and hypertension are the biggest killers. If you have one or the other, it's bad enough, but you have a combination of those two, then you have to be very careful, especially for kidney failure. I mean, we know so many people who have kidney failures on dialysis, especially black folks, all over the place in Nigeria. And what causes those things? Diabetes, hypertension. So please, don't let's fall victim to kidney problems. So diabetes check. They do fasting blood sugar test in the morning. And your primary care, your nurse practitioners, please see them. From this topic this morning, tell them all the tests I'm talking about. If it pertains to you, take a list of them. And from the pastor, from Mr. Bassi, take it with you and say, hey, doc, all these 13 tests, I've been coming to you all this time. You've only done 4 of them. Why is that? So take a copy of them. Glaucoma is another thing. A a lot of people have eye problems, especially glaucoma, you know, and it damages your optic nerve. You know, usually people above 40, it can also be genetically, you know, passed to people as well. So we're supposed to do our eye checks, you know, so if you don't do eye checks thinking that your eye is not part of your organ, yes, it is. I mean, without your sight, what else do you have? So glaucoma is something that we need to also be aware. HIV, I don't have to say too much about HIV. People assume it's gone. Of course, it's not gone. The reason why we think it's gone is because of COVID. Yeah. No, it's not. You know, you still have to continue to practice safe sex and to do all those good things that you need to do to keep yourself safe, not just from HIV, but from other STDs as well. For the younger people, we know that STDs like chlamydia, gonorrhea, are big cause of infertility, you know. So people have to be very, very careful. You know, you have to go to your gynecologist, your primary care physician, your nurse practitioners to do your pap smear, your STD testing and all that, because fertility issues that come up much later in life can be tied to untreated STDs that you have when you're young. You know, so always practice safe sex, condom use and all that. The only time an unmarried woman should have sex without condom is when you're trying to get pregnant, period. Am I right? Anybody want to challenge me on that? Yeah. Then you have a bone density test. You know, as we get older, the bones start getting brittle. So, you know, and it can break easily. One of the most common causes of, you know, death for older folks, you know, is from falling and breaking their legs and hips. Once an older person, 80 and above, or whatever, falls and break a bone, that's the end. You can almost just guarantee that. Yeah. So, and it's because the bone has become brittle. So bone density is part of your screening test, where they will check how dense your bone is. You know, and if it's, of course, not as dense, then they're going to give you medication to, you know, that we all know about, to increase your bone density, your bone strength. You know, of course, the food that you drink also and diet that you take also helps with your bone, milk, cheese, and other vegetables that has calcium. Black folks, of course, are less prone to osteoporosis, but still, we're not immune from all these things that we're talking about this morning. Pap smear, of course, as a gynecologist, pap smear is very, very important. We've changed things around a little bit, where the first pap smear for a woman is at age 21. You know, it used to be, you know, a different way before. So your first pap smear should be every 21. Then from there, I'm talking about normal situation now. Then from age 21 to 30, it's every 3 years. It's no longer every year. It doesn't mean, I'm not talking about your annual wellness. Your annual wellness is every year. You still come to see me every year, but I may not do a pap every year, because I know one of the things that women dread more than anything else in this world is pap smears. Would that be true? The lady was telling me just this past yesterday, he said, I haven't come to you in about, what, 2 years, because I'm scared of the pap smear. And it takes only 2 minutes to do. You know, if you're being done by the wrong person, okay, it can be uncomfortable. But it's not really anything if you have experience to do it. And I know most women, if their pap smears tomorrow, they don't sleep the whole night. Yeah, but it's important, though, because cancer of the cervix is alive and well. Big time. So from age 21, the first one, 21 to 30, every 3 years. After 30, it's every 3 to 5 years, actually, believe it or not. If you do HPV along with it. HPV, human papillomavirus, is the cause of cervical cancer. So if you just do HPV along with, that's every 5 years, if it's negative. you know, and then of course, at 65, you stop. Perhaps, oh yeah, if it's been normal, yeah. And mammogram, I don't have to say too much about that, you know, and everybody knows it's very, very common, you know. If you have a strong family history, first degree relative, your mother, sister, your mammogram is very important to do that. From age 40, you know, just follow the guidelines. Sometimes I do some of my patients at age 35, you know, and from age 40 is every year, every 2 years. From 50, definitely is every year. And of course, you have to do breast self-exam also. You can go online to learn how it's done. You know, just check your breast. You know, once you know your body, the rest is easy. If you keep checking your breast in the shower every day, if anything starts growing, you're going to be the first person to know. You're not going to show up in the doctor and then they have a lump as big as an apple in your breast. It happens. It's like, oh, I didn't know it's there. You don't know something hard like an apple in your breast? No, I don't. Yeah, it's true. So self-breast exam, you know, once a month is also important. And so those are the screening tests. The rest of the stuff I have here is just wellness for women. And I'm not going to, because I know time is money and the other speakers and, you know. But basically, you got the point. You got the point, right? You know. And all of us here, many of us are in the healthcare field. So even though we're humans as well, I was going to say, oh, we know better because we're in the healthcare field, but that's not so. Many of us don't do these things as well. You know, so we don't do it. How can we tell our brothers and sisters to do the same thing? Women see doctors, nurse practitioners, and more than men, right? I tell my women, if you want your husband to be around for a long time, to grow with you, to help you raise your kids, you got to drag him to the doctor. Because men die younger than women. And why? Because we're macho. We feel like, you know, I'm fine. No, we're not fine. So you say, honey, I'll make the appointment for you. So, oh yeah, that's what you have to do. I mean, you don't want to be alone unless you have to. You know that men die. And the reason, once again, is because we don't do a whole lot of checkups. So you have to be the one to be the advocate for him. You know, and of course, it should be an advocate for you in some other ways as well. So, you know, in conclusion, annual wellness exams are essential for persons of all ages. It is especially mandatory for persons over the age of 50. These exams and screenings can help you stay healthy and prevent illnesses. Talk to your primary care provider for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. You owe us some more time for the lost time that people did not hear you.
Oh,
so
wow.
we'll get you back here some other time.
I forget I'm talking to the
Thank you so much, sir.
I'm sorry.
Does anybody have any question for Doctor?
My office is right here in Greenbelt. You can get my information from Dr. Abasi. So I don't deliver babies anymore. I did all the babies I'm delivering, they are getting their PhDs now. So, well, I'm still checking people, mentoring, talking. People coming from Nigeria, I'm one-stop shop. You don't know what to do. You have a situation, your family came, or somebody said, somebody's sick, I don't know what to do. Just come to me. I have my network. I connect you to anything, whether it's lung cancer or whatever, because I've been around, and that's what I do.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Housekeeping. If you haven't tested Nigerian jollof rice before, please don't leave here today without asking for a plate. Okay? We have Nigerian jollof rice with stewed chicken. So please, make sure you eat something, you take something with you before you leave. And then we do have our bathrooms. If you go out to my right and then walk back, there are 2 toilets back there that you can also use. Coffee, tea, water, donuts, please, they are for consumptions. And then we also have, of course, we are doing the COVID test. We're doing blood pressure checks. We've had everything that the doctor said. So today you're going to get some of them free today. Blood pressure checks and your blood sugar, all will be done. Thank you so much.
I wish I could stay. Like I said, I'm on my way to a funeral. And so I wish you good luck. I'm glad to be invited. Hopefully next time I can talk on some, a little bit more. Okay, thank you. And nice to see you guys. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to be Michelle Enyinaya. She's a DNP FNPC. She's a board-certified family nurse practitioner. Michelle was born and raised in Northern Virginia area. She obtained a Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology from Old Dominion University in 2011. After graduating, she went on to pursue a nursing career and obtained a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree from Shenandoah University in 2014, and more recently, a doctorate in nursing degree, family nurse practitioner track in May 2022. She currently works in the Innova Health System in Northern Virginia and resides in Woodbridge, Virginia. Please let's welcome Michelle Enyinaya.
Thank you all for having me here. I think we have PowerPoint set up perfect. All right, so today I will be presenting information on diabetes education. So the contents of this session will cover the definition of diabetes, the type of diabetes, statistics, signs and symptoms of diabetes, risk factors, diagnostic measures, prevention, management, and complications of diabetes, and a diabetes care schedule. Great. So what is diabetes? Diabetes is a chronic health condition that is characterized by elevated blood sugar, also known as hypoglycemia, or hyperglycemia, sorry. This occurs when your body either does not produce enough insulin or it is unable to use insulin properly. So your body cells tend to become resistant. Now that we have a general understanding of diabetes, let's talk about the different types of diabetes. So there are 4 main types of diabetes. So we have type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes, and secondary diabetes. Type 1 diabetes results from the destruction of pancreatic B cells, leading to insulin deficiency, which causes hyperglycemia or elevated blood glucose. Type 2 diabetes results from pancreatic B cell dysfunction and insulin resistance, which can lead to hyperglycemia. Gestational diabetes results from carbohydrate intolerance in women who are pregnant. This type of diabetes may resolve in the postpartum stage, but often places these women at an increased risk for type 2 diabetes in the future. And lastly, secondary diabetes results from associated conditions such as pancreatic disease, corticosteroid hormone excess, or it can be chemically or drug-induced, leading to hyperglycemia. Okay, perfect. So this educational session will primarily focus on type 2 diabetes, which we just covered. So now let's talk about the statistics of type 2 diabetes. So according to the National Diabetes Statistics Report, over 37.3 million individuals in the United States have diabetes. Of the 37.3 million individuals with diabetes, approximately 28.7 million individuals were undiagnosed. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 8.5 million individuals with diabetes were either unaware of their diagnosis or failed to report their diagnosis. In the United States, American Indians and Alaskan Natives have the highest prevalence diabetes at 14.7%, followed by Hispanics at 12.5%, non-Hispanics Blacks at 11.7%, and non-Hispanic Asians at 9.2%, and non-Hispanic whites at 7.5%. According to the CDC, type 2 diabetes is responsible for 90 to 95% of diabetes cases. In 2017, the medical expenses for diabetes in the United States averaged a total of $327 billion. As of 2018, the medical expenses for diabetes in the United States averages a total of $16,752 per individual each year, which is a 26% increase over the last 5 years. Annual medical expenses for individuals with diabetes are 2.3 times greater than an individual without a diabetes diagnosis. So that's why it's very important to make sure that we're getting our regular annual checkups. So now let's discuss some of the risk factors of type 2 diabetes. Some of the most common risk factors include increasing age, being overweight or obese, an increase in fat distribution or waist circumference greater than 40 inches in men and greater than 35 inches in women. And those factors can also lead to an increase for type 2 diabetes. Other risk factors include decreased physical activity or sedentary lifestyle, a family history of diabetes, and race and ethnicity. So it's more common to see it in Black, Hispanic, Native American, and Asian races. Low levels of good cholesterol, high levels of triglycerides, pre-diabetes, pregnancy, pregnancy-related diabetes, and polycystic ovarian syndrome are also risk factors for type 2 diabetes. So some of the common signs and symptoms of type 2 diabetes to monitor for include frequent urination, which often occurs at nighttime, constant feelings of thirst, unintended weight loss, increased levels of hunger, blurry vision, numbness or tingling sensations in your hands and feet, also known as peripheral neuropathy, fatigue, dry skin, sores that heal slowly, or increased infections. So this is a photograph of the road to type 2 diabetes. So clinical diagnosis of diabetes is typically made by history and physical of common signs and symptoms, along with the following indications. So the first one would be a fasting blood glucose level greater than 126. Second would be a 2-hour or a random plasma glucose level greater than 200, or a hemoglobin A1C greater than 6.5%. So now we will talk about the general ways to prevent and treat type 2 diabetes and go further into detail in the upcoming slides. So prevention and treatment methods include monitoring your blood sugar regularly, eating a healthy diet, increasing your activity levels, avoiding or limiting inactivity, weight loss, and medication therapy. So a key factor in diabetes maintenance is self-monitoring of your blood glucose, or checking your blood sugar. So this photograph here will take you through the steps of checking your blood sugar. So the steps are as follows. Just make sure you have a glucometer that is ready for use. Wash your hands thoroughly with warm water and soap. Place the glucose strip inside of the glucose meter or glucometer. Prick your finger using a lancet to draw a drop of blood. Place a drop of blood onto the strip in a glucose meter and wait for the results. You want to write down your blood sugar numbers in your daily blood sugar log and dispose of the lancet and the strip properly in the container. Research indicates it's important to check your blood sugar a few times a day, typically before each meal, so before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then as well as at bedtime. But please do follow the recommended guidelines given to you by your healthcare provider. So it's important to keep a daily log of your blood sugars as often as you can. According to the American Diabetes Association, their target blood sugar level before meals is 80 to 130, and their target for 1 to 2 hours after meals is below 180. Again, please follow the recommended guidelines given to you by your healthcare provider. Now let's discuss nutrition. The American Diabetes Association uses the diabetes plate method guidelines, which is shown here in this photograph. These guidelines recommend that you fill 1/2 of your plate with non-starchy vegetables, fill 1/4 of your plate with lean protein foods, fill 1/4 of your plate with carbohydrates, and drink water or a 0 to low calorie drink. And here I just have is a list of some of the non-starchy vegetables to include, as well as the recommended lean protein foods to include as well. And I'll let you guys kind of take a quick peek at that. And then the next slide just discusses the recommended carbohydrates to include there. Please note that high carbohydrate foods tend to cause high blood sugars, so we want to monitor and limit our total intake. And lastly, for water or low-calorie drinks, the recommendations include unsweetened tea or coffee, iced or hot, unsweetened sparkling or flavored water, diet sodas, and other beverages. So another key factor in diabetes maintenance is exercise. Exercise is an important part of your diabetes journey and health maintenance. Check with your provider to make sure certain exercises are safe for you to do. Some of the recommended types of exercises include aerobic exercise for at least 150 minutes per week or 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. So examples of aerobic exercises are walking, swimming, biking, and running. Resistance exercise can be done at least 2 to 3 times a week to improve strength, balance, and flexibility. Examples of resistance exercises are yoga and weightlifting. Lastly, we want to focus on limiting our inactivity. So this can be achieved by avoiding sitting for long periods of time and taking a standing or walking break at least once every 30 minutes. Weight loss surgery is another option for individuals with a body mass index of 35 and above. In individuals with more severe diabetes, weight loss surgery may occur with a body mass index lower than 35. Weight loss requires a lifelong commitment to eating healthy and exercise. Some of the possible side effects of weight loss surgery are nutritional deficiencies and osteoporosis, which is a condition that results in the weakening of the bones due to the inability to absorb nutrients. So in addition to healthy eating and exercise and weight loss, there are several types of medications to help lower blood sugar level. So I just have some of the more common medications that are used. I'd just like to point out that it's typically oral medication therapy or combination therapy, as well as insulin therapy that can be used for diabetes management. Please work closely with your healthcare provider to choose the medication regimen that will work best for you. Next up, okay. So now that we've discussed the prevention and management, we'll talk about some of the complications of type 2 diabetes. So one of the complications is diabetic ketoacidosis, which is caused by a lack of insulin production, resulting in high blood sugars and the production of ketones. This is a serious complication that must be treated immediately. Other complications include heart and blood vessel disease, such as high blood pressure and stroke, nerve damage, which can result in numbness and tingling sensation, also known as neuropathy, kidney disease, and eye damage, which could possibly lead to blindness. Other complications include an increase in bacterial or fungal skin infections, slow healing wounds, obstructive sleep apnea, dementia, and stroke. A diabetes care schedule was developed by the CDC to help prevent and reduce type 2 diabetes complications. It is recommended that you check your blood sugar on a daily basis before meals and at bedtime, or as often as recommended by your healthcare provider. Do a foot check daily, so you can use a mirror or ask a family member or household member to help you check for any cuts, open wounds, sores, or changes in your toenails or skin. You also want to take your diabetes medications as prescribed. Participate in at least 150 minutes of moderate physical activity each week, and again, this can be broken down into several different ways, such as 20 minutes a day for 7 days a week, or 30 minutes a day for 5 days out the week, or split it up however works best amongst your schedule. Eating, and also you want to eat healthy foods that help your blood sugar stay on track and within your target range. So every 3 months, it is recommended for you to get a hemoglobin A1C test and visit your doctor to develop or maintain a self-care plan. Every 6 months, it is recommended that you see your dentist for a dental examination, obtain a hemoglobin A1C test, and visit your doctor as well to develop or maintain a self-care plan. If you find yourself having a difficult time maintaining your target blood sugar range, or you have recently adjusted your diabetes medication, have your blood work done once every 3 months just to make sure that you're still on track. And if you're meeting your diabetes goals, have your blood work done once every 6 months to make sure you're maintaining your diabetes care plan goals. And lastly, every year it's recommended for you to stay up to date with your yearly flu shot, which we're doing upstairs. So please, if you haven't gotten your flu shot, please do. Also have your doctor check your kidney function tests and also check your cholesterol levels, see a doctor for an eye examination, and also get your hearing checked and do a complete and thorough foot check. And then lastly, it is recommended that you get your pneumonia and hepatitis vaccination series once and have a mental health check done or visit your doctor if any new problems or symptoms arrive. And that completes my presentation today. Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome. The last one I heard was mental health check. You know, when we hear Black people, especially Africans, when we hear mental health check, we think we are running crazy, right? No, we're not. Very important. And there are ways to do it. Our last speaker said you have to be experienced, and the way you ask questions means and matters a lot. So mental health check, especially since after this COVID, we do need it. Everybody needs it, starting from me. So thank you so much, Michelle. We're going to go, based on what she just told us, we're going to take us next to our next speaker, who is going to actually, I'm sure, elaborate more about mental health checks. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, who is from the United States Public Health Services. And he's going to talk to us about healthcare maintenance post-COVID-19 pandemic. And this is Dr. Todd Campbell, PharmD. He's a commander with the USPHS, which is United States Public Health Services. Born in Aberdeen, South Dakota, primary schooling, Roncalli Catholic Schools, joined U.S. Army at 19 years old, and he's a psychological operation group, and worked as a commissioned in Nevada National Guard. I was just in Nevada. I lived there for 5 years. Welcome, sir. And he's also OCS Fort Benning, OBS Infantry Fort Benning, undergraduate chemistry, BSc, University of Nevada, Reno, PharmD, Idaho State University, Pankatola, Idaho, commissioned to USPHS in 2006, and he worked in Indian Health Service, Rapid City, South Dakota, positions held from staff pharmacist to director of pharmacy. He also worked in the Department of Home Health Security, Miami, Florida, Positions held: Assistant Health Services Administrator and Health Services Administrator, also in National Institute of Health, and Inpatient Unit Dose Supervisor. We are so privileged to have Dr. Todd Campbell. Welcome, sir.
I'm actually privileged to be here. Thank you, Michael and Chika, for inviting me. A couple things to kind of segue on that is post-pandemic healthcare. When I worked for Indian Health Service, to give you a little bit of perspective, you know, it's kind of a mystery, the actually reservations, that whole Western environment, that's what I grew up in. I worked on a reservation for a while south of Rapid City that was 80 miles from the nearest Walmart. I mean, there was no phone service. We went out and dealt with Native Americans that lived in small villages that had no running water, no plumbing, no electricity, no phone, no nothing, no central heat. They heated with wood or whatever they collected, and it gets minus 40 below zero in the wintertime. When I was there, the average lifespan for a Native American male, and this goes with these two fantastic providers, was 42 years of age, 52 for a female. So everybody I went to high school with, because I'm in my 50s, is dead. You think about that. Every Native American I was friends with has passed away. Male, female, they're gone. So one of the things, you know, we dealt with down there is you're looking at this, and so if people are in survival mode, that's one of the things I learned in the Army is if people are in survival mode, they're not really paying attention to, oh, look at the bird, look at this, look at what the provider says. So I come in outside the community, and I'm going to tell them, you need to take your medicine, you need to deal with your cholesterol, and you need to deal with everything. These guys, they're going to be like, but it's 40, minus 40 out. I don't really care what you have to say. I got to worry about tonight not freezing to death. And many of the people don't have money for gasoline. Dirt roads, unpaved, the level of poverty. So as an example, state of South Dakota is as big as the country of Germany and has 750,000 people living there. So it is very wide open. You have 3 cities that probably 80% of the population live in. Pine Ridge, Rosebud Indian Reservation are as big as the state of Connecticut and have 35,000 people living there. And so you have these different small villages, and again, so you're in this environment, and I'm going to say, why aren't you picking up your blood pressure medicine? Why aren't you picking up your, you know, your A1C for cholesterol, for diabetes is 10, you're in trouble, you've got kidney, but it's 40 below out. Where's my food at? We actually still go hunt our food, and I didn't get anything. They're not going to pay a word of attention. So one of the things we did, and people are not going to come into the clinic because you have these centralized bureaucratic government clinics that are in the one village and nobody exists there. And so what we did is we have 4-wheel drives, we have a nurse practitioner, a nurse, and a pharmacist, and we would literally go to the villages and go out on these dirt roads, muddy, to meet people. And so that's kind of where my thing is, you know, I also, I moved here from Miami, and COVID hits. So mental health issue. My entire family, my girlfriend didn't come up with me, so I kind of get that. I spent the summer 2020 working with Operation Warp Speed at the White House as a science advisor on the pharmacy end. And irrespective of whatever politics, the thing that I saw is each state in America is its own country. And they had a very weird way of doing things. And we are trying as this hierarchy in DC to tell people how to do things. And many of the states are saying, I really don't care what you have to say. We're going to deal with this. And it really showed to me you know, we have so much money and everything, and we have so much cool stuff in this country, but a lot of it is very dysfunctional, and a lot of us don't communicate, and we don't have any real idea what's happening outside our own zone. And it was really one of the things for me, I felt like I was an ambassador from flyover country to the White House because they're saying it really can't be like that. Yes, it is like that. You know, it is difficult for people. Oh, can't they just go? No, that's not how it works. Isn't there a doctor? No, there is not. Nurse practitioner? No, it doesn't exist. That structure doesn't exist. And it's not just, I mean, you can just go over to Appalachia, or you can go over to West Virginia where my dad's family from, and it's really no different. You can go to those places and it's like, no, I mean, how are people supposed to get there? So I'm going to go in, and so my thing is, let me get my piece of paper here. COVID really has been an incredible magnifying glass on the core challenges of healthcare. It has shown us, not what we do right, but what we do wrong. And we've been doing a lot wrong as far as reaching people. I went to an emergency room in December last year, and it was really a frightening experience. I can't imagine living in an existence that most people in a city do, where they get almost 80% of their health care through a emergency room. I was like, okay, every person in here is going to get sick. Why are we crowding people like into a cattle car and then expecting, more people get sick. If you go to a hospital, and she can go this, what's one of the biggest things we deal with in a hospital? Nosocomial in-hospital infections. You come in, you stay there long enough, you're going to get sick. You're going to pick up something else. So our whole goal should be give people health care, but keep them out of the somewhat system, because that's where you're going to get exposed. You're sick, where are you going? To where more sick people are at. And then you're going to swap it around. Care must be distributed. And again, that's what we did in Indian Health Service, and the VA does it, is you're basically taking it out to the community. But that's the one thing I learned here, is you go up to Baltimore, realistically, it's not that much difference. People don't have cars, people don't have gas. Gas is now going through the roof, things are getting worse. With all the stresses going out there, why should they care about what I have to say in healthcare? Was take the care to them, just like you guys are doing these health fairs. I think these need to become a really, really bigger deal, and it needs to be really embraced by the system, and they need to quit saying, well, we've never done it this way, or this is not a good deal. We need to be going out to the communities, and we need to go in and say, okay, we're going to be in this block here this week, and we're going to meet with people. The idea of these huge monolithic buildings where everybody goes to, I just think is a thing of the past. I just had a medical appointment where, I set up my screen, set up a thing, have a program. The doctor examined a rash. He said, go get a thing. I went up the street, got my blood draw. Instead of spending 3 hours driving and going back to the doctor, I was in and out and done in 20 minutes. Why can't that, occur? And if people don't have the IT ability, why don't we set up kiosks or something with stuff so people can go in, do their thing with the nurse practitioner, they get their blood pressure checked, she hits send, and then you walk right to the pharmacy and it's right there, because there's pharmacies in every block. And, we have all this education, make us use it. Distributed healthcare, inclusive, virtual, usage of stuff. We have tons of technology. I just don't feel like we're using it. Ensure care is digitally enabled. Again, we have all the blood pressure machines. We have stuff. We have community centers. You have churches like this. Maybe we need to collaborate with the insurance companies and everything else and pay people, or even rent space like this where people are at. People come in here on Sundays. You go to services. Set up and say, oh, by the way, we're going to also have clinics here on, afterwards. Make it available to people. You can't just sit there and say, why are you not taking your pills? Well, maybe I need to make it available so you can go in and do it. Maybe I need to make it easier. Maybe we need to meet people halfway and make it happen. And again, my whole thing is decentralization, video conferencing, and then all medical professionals need to be involved. I feel like a lot of our, of course I'm biased, I'm a pharmacist, but I feel like our nurses and pharmacists are underutilized, because a lot of us, at least I did, I went through physical assessment. You go through this, and then, okay, I'm going to go to work at Walmart and never touch or use that ever again. One, it also mentally engages the pharmacist to make sure we want to stay in there where you're having an effect and using the knowledge we're giving. But if you look at one of the most accessible medical professionals in any community is a pharmacist, but yet you can't talk to us and we can't help you out. That needs to change. And even if we do a collaboration where we have pharmacists and we bring nurses in, so you have a like urgent care with a video conference, and then we can loop into you guys that maybe you're in an office. One of the things we also did at Indian Health Service is most of your medication management, your refills, basic stuff was run by a nurse pharmacist team. If we had something more, we went to the nurse practitioner, and the doctor spent their day diagnosing like new illnesses or more traumatic stuff and focused on that. And we could move a tremendous amount of people there, and we saw our compliance really go up being a collaborative team. Like I said, historically the medical doctors were at the helm of care, but It needs to kind of go down. And if you go to many other countries, it's not as doctor-centric. I've been to Jordan, where I hurt myself and went to a doctor, and they use they call them medics, but I would probably call them a PA or a nurse practitioner. But I felt like in Jordan it was more accessible and easy for me to get health care than it is in this country. It is just so bureaucratic. And then, and you're not feeling good anyways. You don't want to deal with it. I mean, you just want to get things taken care of. Make innovation work for all patients. What's been true for a long time, but again has only been magnified, is that innovation and equity must be synonymous. We must make it more equal and make it accessible to everybody, just not certain groups of people who are able to figure out and manipulate the system. And I'll tell you, and Chica will tell you, I'm very good at making the system work for me. I'm one of those people that figures out the bureaucracy, and I'm very good at manipulating the system to my good ends. But it's a weird gift I have to figure out systems. But not everybody is able to do that, and then people give up and move on, and then you get into the realm where these guys are talking about, and your numbers rise up, or guys say, oh, screw it, I got something else to do, and you get the silent killers that take you out, and we don't complain even if you don't feel good. Place healthcare where it's easier for providers. For decades, it's been a push, just for patient compliance, but we need to maybe have our compliance at our end. And the pandemic shows it isn't just patients, but it's how we provide care and how we somehow lock people out and make it very difficult. We need a new way of healthcare. Post-19 has shown how uneven healthcare is, how fragmented public health is, and there's no central vision of what is healthcare. This is what we need to ask people. What do you think healthcare is? We need to come up with a central vision of what we consider it is. Is it primary care? Is it when your leg's broken? Is it this? What is healthcare? And this is all leading to dysfunction. And but this has been an opportunity to kind of see how things are broken. What we need to do, and this is where you guys are involved in health, your portion of healthcare is, you guys need to hold the healthcare community accountable and make sure we progress. And make sure when you vote and you deal with people, really listen to what they're saying. And if people say, a politician says healthcare, say, I have a question. Define healthcare to me. Tell me what you think it is, and see if what they think it is matches what you think it is. And then communicate to them. Anyways, that's all I have. Say anything, or Chica's looking at me. All right, thank you.
One question that I have, in the Indian community that
Correct.
the reservations
Yes.
that you served in, are they really receptive to the change?
It's a complex situation because a lot of stuff has been forced down their throat over the years.
So they are resistant.
They're resistant, but a lot of it, here's how we would do. I would go to meetings, and because all the men are dead, I'd have all these women that are in their 60s and 70s, and they're basically the leaders of the community. It used to be a patriarchal society, now it's a matriarchal society. And so I would meet with all the old women, and then I would tell all the old women what we're going to do and how we're going to change things. Then they would disseminate through the community, then we would come back and be able to do it. And if you could sit down and explain why we're doing it, and that we're not doing it to you, we're doing it with you, people were receptive. But the hierarchical where you come in the uniform, or I'm the health provider, and this is the way it is, that did not work. Not at all. They were not receptive to that. Because there's been this whole history of things like, go live here, go do this, go do that. But if you engage with them, yeah, we could get it done. But you had to figure out who was technically in charge, and it wasn't always who you could have a tribal elected leader, but they weren't really in charge. You had to figure out who the real power players were. And it was usually the old women of the villages were the power players.
Interesting.
So I think it's also more of trust, just to add to
Trust
what
issue.
Dr. Yeah, they have some trust issue. I remember wanting to take a job in White River, Arizona. I was at one point.
That's actually a very, very good clinic.
Yes.
That is a teaching school. They do a lot of they have a lot of medical The one thing I will say about Native Americans is, saying Native American is like saying African. You can go to the next village and have a different language, different way of looking at things, and they might even get along, they might even hate each other. And so when you say Indian, you have, there's 350 recognized tribes. You can have such variation that when people come out there and I tell them, you need to really quit watching TV on what you think, because it's nothing like what you're gonna see.
Can you come to the front, sir?
With the way we work, with the way we got ready for COVID-19, because I just had my flu shot today, there were questions they asked about the monkeypox. Is there anything that we're doing, NIH, is doing to get ready for monkeypox, and you think it would be another pandemic?
So, yes. So I've been hearing, so I sit on one of the committees with one of the pathologists that I review stuff coming up. It's one of my kind of extracurricular things that Marilyn gets mad at me about. This is one of our bosses because I stick my nose into other things. We are now running, so they have ordered, I don't know how many million doses of the monkeypox. They're also authorizing new manufacture and licensing actually in Montgomery County. And they're running a trial coming up where I think we've got 350 people enrolled in a trial within the most susceptible community. And they're doing a split dose, so to maximize it, and they're also coming up with a brand new vaccine to authorize it. The one thing that's changed a little bit from pre-COVID to now is the authorization of a new vaccine used to take decades, one, because you had to do things manually, and they would look, now we have electron microscopes, computers, and they can run the statistics, but the FDA still does it by hand. So they would, whereas we can run the statistics within 48 hours, they will take 6 months because they literally do it by hand. And their answer is, but that's the way we've always done it. That is changing. They're being forced to change now. So the answer is yes, there is stuff coming, and we do have a trial coming up. And you know the other third trial we have coming up, you heard about that one.
Because it's funny, because my brother just had a patient last night who came in full-blown monkeypox. Face was swollen. And he had to trach the patient. So, and I started wondering, when we get such patients at our place, do we have, like you're saying, do we have anything as now that we could do to protect all the patients? Because she's claiming that everything is pretty contagious.
Yeah, and that's the thing with
And-
monkeypox versus COVID. The thing with COVID was, I've got COVID, I touch this sits there for a day or so in the sunlight.
Right,
COVID
right.
is history.
But monkeypox is...
Monkeypox can hang around for I'm thinking weeks.
Right.
And so a lot of people are catching it not just from human to human, but they might go over to hang out at somebody who's
Much
had
more
it.
random.
And it's like the old smallpox where they used to, people catch it off blankets. And that's exactly it. That's where we're ordering those paper trays for the
Okay.
COVID. And we've been working a lot on the COVID unit, or swapping them over for the monkeypox trial.
Okay.
And they're going to be doing an Ebola trial.
Okay.
And so you know there's an Ebola outbreak in
Yeah,
Uganda
there is.
right
There
now.
is. We have a patient on the unit.
They did come in, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions, please? This
And
is
that's the
question-
weird thing about my job is as supervisor, I get it, she sees pieces, I get to see absolutely every single trial that goes through there. I have my nose into.
It's always good to have nose in everything. It helps. Any more questions? Okay, this is actually questions and answer time, but if we don't, I know we started a little bit late, we'll go ahead and continue. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead, remind people again about the jollof rice. And also we have coffee back there and donuts, please. Feel free.
And for those who are here for screening or the vaccinations, please indicate so that they can take you up as time permits.
Thank you, Pastor. So I'm going to go ahead and call our next speaker. Our next speaker today is Renee Elisami. Did I get it right? Elisami. Thank you so much. Thank you for that correction. Actually, it's on the biograph. It says how to pronounce it. Elisami. Okay, Renee. Renee is a financial specialist based in Laurel, Maryland. She is the founder and CEO of Tri Financial Services. She has a bachelor's degree in finance from the University of Maryland and has helped hundreds of families in Baltimore, D.C. area over the past 29 years with their life insurance and retirement planning needs. She is also the proud recipient of American Classic Agency's ACE Award and has also received numerous other awards and accolades in her field. She also believes in giving back by conducting free financial literacy workshops and seminars at churches, civic organizations, government agencies, and sororities. Her goal is to help Middle American become financial independent and to show them how to leave a legacy to their families. So please let us welcome Ms. Renee.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Pastor Wadibia. I had to practice his name also. And Michael and Chika Obasi for inviting myself here today, and Sarin Adams, who's going to speak after I speak. Today, we're both going to be speaking about building your financial house from different aspects. So today, I'm going to talk about building your financial house with the infinite banking system and bank on yourself. Are my slides up? Oh, great. Wonderful. So that's my name. And my Nigerian first name is Tola. Tola, well, for those of you who can pronounce it. But I use Renee, obviously, for the people who can't. Has anyone here heard about your private bank or infinite banking? Anybody heard of the concept and the idea of it? No? Okay. Usually when I do the seminar, Serena and I have done seminars for over a decade together. Usually I talk about the power of paying yourself first, retirement planning. I usually talk about the importance of getting life insurance on your parents, and I usually talk about how to use life insurance to create generational wealth. But today I decided to do a different topic because I've been having more and more people reach out to me and they want me to explain this concept and the idea of infinite banking system and the bank on yourself system. So today is going to be, seems like it's going to be something new for everybody. So what is your private bank? That's creating one's own tax-free lending system to finance large purchases. And how do you do this? It's basically a system whereby one becomes their own banker by growing liquid cash value properly designed in a whole life or IUL policy so they could borrow money for college education for their kids, to buy a new car, you know, to finance a business or buy a new house. So let me kind of gauge the audience and see where all of you are at as far as when it comes to your finances and your financial goals. Anybody here in the audience planning on buying a new car or a newer car in the next 5 years? Anybody have any thoughts of buying a new car in the next 5 years? No? Nobody's buying a new car in the next 5 years? You're going to drive your car to the ground?
If we have to.
They're like, we don't want a car payment. Okay. Anybody here have children? Anybody have children that are going to be going to university or college in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
Next 10 years? Put your hands up. Let's participate. I want to make sure y'all are awake. Okay. Anybody here thinking of starting a business in the next 5 years? I know a lot of you probably want to start your own business. Okay, that was the key word. I'm starting my own business in the next 5 years. Anybody planning on buying a home or rental property in the next 5, 10 years, or a bigger house? Okay, because I have a lot of people now and clients who've been approaching me who want to buy rental properties or flip houses and kind of get into that business. So let's talk about that. What are some of the ways that you would finance either college education, your business, or buying a new car. Either you would what? Save money, right? That's one way you would get the money. What are some of the other ways that you would finance this business? Where would the money come from? Or for college? I heard it, borrow money, exactly. You'd borrow money, either you'll take out a personal loan from the bank, either you'll take out cash out from your house, or you use your credit cards. Those are usually the ways stereotypically that we save or are able to make big purchases or finance businesses. So now I'm gonna kind of change your mind and talk to you about how we can do that differently. Let's first talk about the pros and cons of the usual way that we would do that. So if we save money in the bank, so let's say you say I want to start my business in 5 years and I need $20,000 in the next 5 years, seed money for this business. So you put that money in the bank. What interest rate are you getting right now in the banks?
0.01.
Thank you, Pastor. 0.01. So it's not really growing, right? Whereas back in the day, I have been in the financial service industry since 1993. When I started my business and my financial service practice, interest rates were what? In the 90s, what were people getting in the bank? Anybody remember the 90s?
3 to 4%.
Exactly. 3 to 4% in the 90s. Now it's 0.1%. So your money is not really growing, it's not keeping up on inflation when you keep it in the bank. And at the end of the year, what do you get from the bank? What do they send you? What do you have to pay?
1098.
Exactly, taxes on the interest. So, you know, there are pros and cons. Obviously, you put money in the bank, you know that you'll have access to all the money, but you don't have any guaranteed interest rate. Right now, you don't really have any interest rate, and you have to pay taxes at the end of the year for it. But that is one way to save and put money aside for your purchases, like, you know, new business, college, those kind of things. The other way to do is what you said, loans. If you take it, you know, use your credit card, what interest rates are they charging you if you have to use your credit cards? 18 to 20%. You cash out from your house or take a HELOC. Interest rates now, I just had a meeting with a loan officer, now they're like 8 to 10%. So obviously, you know, that's high. And not only that, if you borrow money from your house, what happens if you don't pay it back? What happens? If you take out this loan for your business or a car and you don't pay it back, what happens?
Foreclosure.
Yeah, they're going to foreclose on your house. Exactly. It's going to affect your credit. If you make payments late, it's going to affect your credit. And you also have to apply for this HELOC and this cash out. So what we're going to talk about is how to do things differently. So I'm sorry, actually, if you can go back a couple slides, I'm sorry. Go back a couple slides to the one that says your private bank. I'm not sure. Oh, nobody's up there. Okay. The benefits of creating your own bank. So let's talk about somebody. Actually, that's fine. You can leave it on here. That's fine. So the idea and the concept of creating your own bank means that you become your own banker. And how do you do this? The rich and the wealthy have been doing what I'm going to talk to you about for years. Basically, what they do is they properly structure a whole life insurance or index universal life policy so that it can build up a liquid cash value so that when they're ready to make these purchases, they have the money in there. And why would they want to structure a whole life or index universal life to do that? Let's talk about that. And just so you know, there are not a lot of insurance companies actually who could structure this plan and this infinite banking system in your private bank, but there are a few out there. And I'm going to tell you the benefits and why it's something that you may want to consider. So first of all, the first line item, you could put money, as much money as you want into it. Usually what you want to do is put what your disposable income into this infinite banking system. So after you've paid your bills, your expenses, you've paid your tithes, you know, you've taken care of all your financial obligations, you want to put whatever's disposable and left, what you would normally save in the bank, you want to put in the infinite banking system. And let's be honest, everybody knows this. You save money in the bank, what happens? You know, you have a lump sum of money. Somebody calls you, your children, I need money. Somebody back home in Nigeria, I need money. It's very hard to save money in the bank because you have so much access to it. Something always seems to come up, right? Am I speaking the gospel? Something always come up. You save 15, 20,000, then, like I said, somebody's calling, pulling at you. And you could just write checks. You could wire money. You can use an ATM. Now the money is easily gone. The infinite banking system, you could structure it and put as much money as you want into it. You can borrow money against it tax-free. You don't have to worry about qualifying for a loan like you would for a HELOC or a cash out or a new credit card. There are no early withdrawal penalties, so you don't have to worry. Or if you don't make a payment, then you don't have to worry about, you know, late fees. Because the way it works is that when you have this money in the cash value of a whole life, or you could use the index universal life policy, when you're ready to make a purchase, and in your case, all of you basically said, I would like to start a business in the next 5 years or so. So now you need $20,000 to start your business. You call the insurance company, and they actually could direct that $20,000 into your account. What happens is, even though you're borrowing money from your policy, the insurance company actually doesn't take the money out of your account. What they actually do is they're lending you money from their discretionary account, but your money in that whole life or index universal life is still actually collecting interest. So I'm a numbers person, so let's use numbers. You borrow $10,000 from your cash value policy, okay? Because you want to start this business. Let's say the whole life insurance is giving you a 3% rate of return. Even though you have borrowed $10,000 to start this business, you know, your nursing business or whatever you're trying to start, they are still going to give you $300 at the end of the year, even though you took out $10,000 to start your business. That money is, in your mind, it's gone, but it's actually not gone. It's still sitting there accumulating and gaining interest. If you had that same $10,000 in the bank and you take $10,000 out, that money's gone. You're not going to get the 0.1% interest on that money. It's gone. With a whole life, index universal life, when you borrow money, your money is still there sitting and growing money. So it's a wonderful way to put money aside short-term for short-term goals. Also, the great thing about when you borrow money from your policy is the payment structure. Guess what, y'all? You don't have to pay it back as a structured payment. When you take out that loan from your, your bank, do you have to pay that back monthly, or do they say you can pay it whenever you want? What did they tell you? Yeah, you have to pay back monthly, right? It's a structured payment. They don't just say, do they say to you, oh, you took out this HELOC or cashed out your, your equity, or you took out a private loan. Do they say, oh, pay it whenever you want? Is that what they tell you? No, nobody tells you that. When you do the infinite banking system and you bank on yourself and you take the cash out of your policy, you could pay it back how you want. Let me give you an example. I had lunch with my colleague yesterday, and I was asking him about, he flips properties, and I said, oh, how did you pay for the last property you just flipped? He said he took the money out of his cash value life insurance, and he bought a property in Baltimore, paid complete cash. He did not go to a lender, did not borrow any money. He took it out from his cash value life insurance. And guess what? He didn't have to worry about paying that money back right away. First, he remodeled the house that he purchased, and then he put it on the market and he sold it, basically flipped the house. That process could take you 3 to 6 months. During those 3 to 6 months, he was not in a position to pay that loan back. But the good news is once he flipped the house, he got a lump sum. He then paid himself back, paid the insurance company back the loan, and then the money he had left over, he put towards the house that he currently lives in. If he had taken the loan out from a credit card or a private loan, he would have had to start paying money right away. But because he borrowed it from himself, he had the flexibility to wait till he sold the house, made money, and then he paid the loan back. And all the while, the money that he had borrowed was still there collecting interest. So he didn't have to worry that he waited 6 months to start paying it back, or dump a lump sum and worry about bad credit, like somebody harassing, calling him, why haven't you made a payment? That was not the situation, because it was his money. He borrowed from himself, the infinite banking system. Also, how many of you here have children? How many of you have had to go through the financial aid process with your kids applying for college? Anybody here know of anyone going through the financial aid process? What do they look at? Or even yourself, like, I went to college. They look at assets. When you're applying for financial aid for yourself or for your kids, aren't they looking to see how much money you have in the bank, how much money that you have access to? Guess what? Money in a life insurance policy in most states does not affect your financial aid. So now you have $100,000 sitting in the bank. They're like, oh, no. We're not giving you any money. You have $100,000 sitting in the bank. You can pay for it yourself. You have $100,000 sitting in a cash value policy, then in most states, it does not affect your qualification. They don't add that up. That's a big deal, y'all. So, the private banking system, you can use that money to help with college expenses for your kids. It could be used for buying a car in cash. And more importantly, a lot of you are thinking businesses. I want to, start a business. It's seed money. You pay it back, and then down the road, you can use it to buy another business. Some people say to me, oh, why can't I just use an IRA or my 401k money to start my business or something like that? And you can, but there are pros and cons to everything. You know, with a Roth IRA, first of all, some of you make too much money. You may not even be able to put money into your Roth IRA because you make too much, and there are limitations on how much you have to put in. So if you need to save a lot of money in a short time frame, you may not be able to do that with a Roth IRA. Some of you may say, oh, I'll borrow money from my 401k or my 403b, and you can, but guess what? Same thing. Can you pay it back whenever you want? No. It's a structured payment. You have to pay it back. They take it right out of your paycheck. But what if you're not ready to pay it back yet because your business hasn't started making money, and now things are really tight financially? So that may not be the best option when it comes to borrowing money. So basically, this private banking system is a system that is created using a whole life or index universal life to save money so that you could borrow from yourself when you are ready to start your business and you need to make a large purchase. So next slide. Your private bank. The rich and the wealthy, y'all, have been doing this for years. If you go to the one with the pictures, you'll see that when Walt Disney, anybody been to Disney? Anybody taking their kids to Disney? Guess what? When Walt Disney started his theme park, it was used with a cash value from a life insurance. Anybody heard about the Pampered Chef? She sells a lot of cooking products. Doris Christopher, same thing. She borrowed $3,000 from her life insurance policy to pay for, to start her business. J.C. Penney could not make his payroll during the Depression. He couldn't pay his employees. He used cash value of life insurance. Ray Crockett, anybody here ever ate McDonald's? Kids ate McDonald's, not jollof rice. Definitely it's not jollof rice. And I'm looking forward to that Nigerian jollof rice. I'm taking some home with me. I got some people to feed. Oh, thank you, plenty. I'm ready. I love jollof rice and I can't cook. But McDonald's started his business with 2 loans from a life insurance policy, y'all. The rich and wealthy have been doing this for years. We're just not hip to it, and we just don't know about it. So we need to get educated. Just like she's educating you about diabetes and he educated you about getting your health, Serena and I are going to talk to you about getting your financial house in order and doing things differently and the way others have been doing it for years, and we just need to get on board with it. Yeah, you're welcome. Let's look at the next slide. So people like to see numbers. They want to say, okay, how does this look? How, show me the numbers. Let's talk down the road. So I wasn't really sure of the average age group, so I just said, let's look at a 40-year-old female. And, the numbers change if you're younger, the numbers change if you're older, if you're a smoker, all of that, and the amount you put in. Y'all, I just chose $500. It could be any amount. It could be $200 a month. It could be $1,000 a month. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you know you need a certain amount of money in 5 years to start your business or for college education, then you decide how much you put in. But really, what you look at is what you have after you've paid your tithes, your mortgage, and your expenses. So in this scenario, let's use $500. So first thing right off the bat, if that person puts $500 in this infinite banking system and dies the next day, their family, if they, God forbid they die the next day, their family gets $125,000 immediately. That could be used to still make sure the child goes to college, mortgage is paid, the car, everything. You put that same $500 in the bank, you die the next day, it's only $500. But let's say they live, 5 years down the road, they're ready to start their business. That young lady who's 40, is now 45, has about $26,500 that she has in there, that she's been able to save, keep save, and she could touch. So she takes that $26,500, starts her business is doing well, and then she's like, okay, I'm gonna pay it back. So now she pays it back to herself and interest. Then she's like 5 years more down the road, my first child is going to college. I need to pay for community college or, 4-year university. Now they have $57,500. They take the loan out for the university. Now their child graduates, PhD, making more money than you. You're like, hey, help me pay some of this back. They help you pay it back. Now 5 years more down the road, your next child is ready to go to college. Guess what? You could take money out. So you could just see how this can create perpetual wealth and generational wealth, because what you're doing is you become the bank and the lending system. So now your kid wants to start a business, or your grandchild, you've already set up this system, and this system has been in place that you set up years ago. So that's just an example, but obviously you could put more, you could put less in, depending on what your budget allows. Next slide. I've been in business 29 years helping people create different financial programs. And, you know, obviously in the interest of time is short. I just let people know that, you know, everybody's entitled to a free complimentary consultation. Everybody's situation's different. Everybody's goals is different. Whatever your needs are, you can call me. You can take a picture of that. Those of you who are online can take a picture of a screenshot. You can text me. You can call me. You can go to my website. You know, call me. We can set up an appointment. We can talk about what your financial goals are. And it's also in your handout. Does everybody have a handout? Oh, I'm sorry. I should have even mentioned that everybody, does everybody have a handout? Everybody should have a handout, and it does have my name, my phone number, and the website. And then, last but not least, does everybody have this green sheet? Can you tear it? I want you to tear it. Just rip it. Just rip it. And what you're going to do is she's going to bring it around. Who needs one? I'm sorry. Who does not have a handout? And everybody should have a pen. Did everybody get a pen with my name and number? Okay. Some people, who here needs a pen? Something. Everybody need a pen? If you could just fill out your name, your phone number, email, and if you want to, complimentary consultation, if you want to join the newsletter. Also on this sheet, you could check off if you want information about the infinite banking system. A lot of people, especially my African clients, talk to me about life insurance for their parents. And Seren is going to come up next. If you want information about setting up a will, power of attorney, wills, trusts, guardianship for your minors, you could check it off. And after she finished speaking, we're going to have question and answers. And if you could just tear that off, and then when we both finish speaking, you could just pass it along to me, hand it to me later. And then I'll call you for those who are interested in getting more information on what I talked about. Seren will call her office will call you about those who are interested in talking about estate planning. And you could just fill out any comments you have. One thing last but not least, before I introduce Seren, who's the estate planner and the lawyer who's going to talk about wills and trust and power of attorney, I just want to tell you, has anybody here heard about one of the richest families in the U.S., the Rockefellers? Right, yeah, the Rockefeller Center in New York. I'm going to read something. When I Google this, I'm just going to read it verbatim so I don't mess it up. The Rockefellers have used a series of irrevocable trusts that help pass down wealth to future generations. These trusts both fund and remain funded through premium life insurance policies and include strict stipulations that protect the family from the risk of irresponsibility and behavior. So this kind of talks about what both Seren and I are talking about. First, it talks about the fact they set up an irrevocable trust, and they use life insurance that they put on different members of the Rockefeller family. So as they pass, that trust is funded by life insurance. So we're both talking, myself and Seren, from different angles. We're both talking about how to create generational wealth, how to keep that money going into perpetuity for future generations. And that's a great example of how the rich and wealthy have been doing this for years. And we just need to start doing things differently in our community so that it's not just we're worried about today. We can't just worry about today. We need to worry about our children's future, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And that's what the Rockefellers did, and has been very, very successful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Seren Adams. We have actually worked together now for about 10 years, and we do a lot of seminars together at churches and sororities. So let me read her bio to you. Okay. Seren G. Adams is an attorney with a passion for organization and excellence. She founded Adams Law Office, LLC over 20 years ago to help her clients get their financial houses in order and find peace of mind. She's an experienced member of the Maryland Bar Association, the District of Columbia Bar Association, the Elder Council, the Wealth Council, and the Christian Legal Council. Seren obtained a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Government and Politics from the University of Maryland in 1994, and then completed her coursework for a Master's of Art degree in English with a specialty in rhetoric. Seren's then obtained her Juris Doctorate degree from George Washington University Law School. She's a published author. She's a speaker, presenting on estate planning throughout the Maryland metro area on radio, TV, and online. Seren was born in Guyana, South America, and moved to Durham, North Carolina with her family as a young child. And then a few years later, she relocated to Maryland. Seren, her husband, and son enjoy volunteering at their church and relaxing, hiking, biking, and many parks and trails in the scenic DMV area. So please welcome Seren Adams. Thank you. Yeah, I'll come up. Here you go.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you, Renee. That was a very, very good presentation. I took a lot of mental notes because that is new from what we normally talk about together. Okay, so I'm going to try to balance this so I can see my notes, because whenever I go off notes, you end up with less information because I start talking about cases. So I'm going to be talking about getting your affairs in order, leaving a legacy instead of a mess. I do estate planning. I've been doing estate planning for about 20 years now. Started off with that in my practice from the very beginning. My family had me doing their estate plans as soon as I graduated law school, as if I knew what I was doing right out of law school, which I did not, but have since really developed this area in my practice to really target families, especially families with young kids, to make sure that families have their things together and keep them out of court and out of conflict. So we can go to the next slide. I always start off with a big picture kind of concept, which is something I've come to understand over the years of doing this in my practice. Estate planning is really not about you. So most families come in and they're doing estate planning for their families, for their children, for their parents, sometimes siblings, sometimes your church. You're doing it for somebody else. So that is helpful to start off thinking of right now. Who are the people in your life that you want to protect? Who are the people that you would be doing a plan for? And keep that kind of front of mind as we go through this so you can kind of focus on the things that you need to take away. And this is also one of the concepts to keep in mind. If you say to your family, I have it all taken care of for you, it's all going to be okay, make sure that that is actually the case. This is going to be fun to turn these slides. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so next slide. We're going to go over some basics first really quickly. I know in the interest of time you don't spend the entire day here, so I'm going to quickly go over some basics about estate planning, but it's important to know some of this because a lot of misconceptions are out there about estate planning that we want to dispel. And then we're going to really look at the recommended estate plan, the kind of plan that you should have in place for your family. So next slide. Start off with some terminology about your estate. When we're talking about your estate, we mean all of your stuff. So your home, your vehicles, jewelry, all of the things inside of your home, and your life insurance. So those policies that Renee was just talking about, those are considered part of your estate when you're looking at the estate for tax purposes. So after you pass away, the federal government has something to say about what your estate is, and so does Maryland. Which is why we look at this as one of the first level things, is to make sure you're thinking of all of the things that are included in your estate. Add that up in your head right now, because it's important to know that amount so that if you hit the threshold for estate taxes, that you're doing planning for that. Most of us will not have to deal with the current estate tax threshold for the federal estate tax, which is 40%. It's a huge amount. It doesn't kick in until your estate is over about $12 million. So for most of us, that isn't a problem yet. I always say to my clients, it's not your current problem, but they are looking at reducing that amount. The Biden administration had talked about reducing that to $3.5 million, which if you're including your life insurance and your home in this area, because home values are very high in this area, you can quickly start getting up to these amounts. And if you're married, that's for both of your life insurance policies and all of those things included. So you want to get that amount in mind. It's important to know it so you can let your estate planning attorney know it so that they're doing planning connected to this, because you can avoid or at least minimize or delay estate taxes depending on what kind of plan you put in place. Next slide. Another big thing to know is the Maryland intestacy rules. This is something that most people have assumptions about what's going to happen after they pass away. Most of those assumptions are incorrect in Maryland about what actually happens, so I always share this information. For example, if you're married, a lot of couples assume their spouse is going to inherit everything after they pass away, that's the basic most basic thing that's going to happen, and that is not correct in Maryland. In Maryland, if you are married and say your parents are still alive and you pass away, your spouse inherits half of your estate and your parents inherit the other half. So I'll let that sink in so that hopefully you have good relations with your in-laws because you could be sharing money with them. If you are married and you have children, in Maryland, your children inherit half of the estate, your spouse inherits the other half. So most people assume their spouse is going to get everything and they're going to take care of the kids. That's not how it happens. And realistically, what that means is that after you pass away and your kids inherit half, if they're minors, that's going into a custodial account that they will then get access to 100% when they turn 18. The custodial account can be problematic just for the fact that the guardian is usually the person in charge of it. That may or may not be a good thing. And the fact that they inherited at 18 is one of the biggest issues, because if you remember back to when you were 18, that's the worst possible time to be inheriting any kind of lump sum of money. Yeah, so that's important to know. The intestacy laws can be completely avoided if you have some sort of estate plan in place, which is why it's really important to know how to do estate planning. Next slide. So one of the other concepts we want to get down before we get into the recommended plan is probate. I'm sure you all have heard about probate, and probably not good things. If you've had to go through probate with a family member or friend, you know that it is something you want to avoid. Probate is essentially the process of suing yourself after you've passed away for the benefit of your creditors. So it really makes no sense to do. It's a court process. The key thing to know is that if you don't have the proper estate plan, meaning if you have no estate planning documents, or if you just have a will, and most of us do not realize this, a will has to go through probate. Probate, the issues with it are there's a delay involved in Maryland for a regular estate. The minimum amount of time for a probate process is 7 to 12 months. 7 months is the minimum, 12 months is the average. And Maryland is doing pretty good because most states it's about 18 months for the average. It also has a cost involved. It's capped in Maryland, so for most estates, say you have an estate of about $500,000, it's going to cost about $20,000 to take that through the regular estate process in Maryland. So you're reducing the amount that your family will get. It also is public, so when you think about that and you have, say, minors involved or elderly people involved who are inheriting from your estate, anyone can go to the Register of Wills office, find out who the beneficiaries are, what they're inheriting, when they're inheriting, and their contact information. So it really opens your family up to predatory individuals unnecessarily. That's not something that has to happen. Probate is completely avoidable with the correct estate plan. And especially intestacy probate, like we just mentioned, intestacy rules are when you don't have any kind of plan in place. The state of Maryland tells what happens to your estate plan. All right, our next slide. I think I went through most of that. Okay, our next slide. So what are some of the transfers that will avoid probate so you can get that off of the radar for your family? There's several. So joint tenancy, most of us are familiar with. That's if you own something with somebody else. Most of us know this because you own a vehicle sometimes with your spouse. If you buy a house with your spouse, you own it jointly. When one person passes away, when you own something jointly, the other person that you own it jointly with inherits it outright outside of probate. So it avoids probate. The issue with it, and all of these things will have pros, but these first two have some major cons, which is why we recommend a trust for estate planning purposes. That joint tenancy, when that first person passes away and the second person inherits, after that second person passes away, the remaining joint tenant, that asset has to go through probate to get distributed to anyone else. So it only delays the probate process, it doesn't eliminate it. So that's very important to know. The beneficiary designation, that's another way to avoid probate. You can do that by adding a beneficiary to accounts like life insurance policies, retirement accounts. What a lot of people will do is have their spouse as the primary beneficiary, then their kids after that. The primary issue there is, number one, these things are not kept up to date. So sometimes people will have their parents from the initial job that they had on a policy or a retirement account, and they never update it. So they pass away and their parents are getting that money instead of their spouse or their kids who they're actually intending to have it go to. Another thing other than keeping it up to date is that scenario I just talked about where you have your kids as backup beneficiaries. If your spouse passes away with you and your kids end up inheriting, you're back to that initial scenario I talked about where it goes into the custodial account. Who knows who the guardian is going to be of that custodial account, so that may be a problem. Then they're getting it at 18, and that's usually a big lump sum if it's coming out of a retirement account or life insurance policy, and that's the worst possible time to get that lump sum. Basically what's going to happen is their friends are dictating what's going to happen with that money. It's probably a trip to Jamaica, a shopping trip, a trip to Vegas. It's not what you're intending to have happen. So it's not the way to leave assets to somebody if you want to make sure it's taken care of. The trust is the recommended estate planning approach, and we'll get into more detail about how that works. Let's first talk about, hold on, let me skip through. You can skip through like about 3 slides. I didn't tell you to progress, but I went over the stuff that's on them. So we should be at, yes, this one. So what other things to include in your estate plan? So in addition to the trust, here is the list of other things you want to make sure you're getting in your estate plan when you get an estate plan prepared. Number one, you should never do this online by yourself because you don't know what you don't know, and the time your family will figure out that you've not done it correctly is after they can't do anything about it. So you want to make sure a professional is handling this with you. The first item I have on here is a record of tangible and intangible property or assets. So this is something that's often overlooked altogether in estate planning. It's something we deal with initially. So your initial even questionnaire with us is tallying everything you own. And this is something you can do on your own as well, even without an estate plan. And it's really important to do because right now in Maryland, there's $1.6 billion in the unclaimed fund. That's money that I call it where money goes to die. I think you can go to the next slide, actually. It has that on there. Yeah, I call it where money goes to die. That's the graphic of that. Because literally, this is money you've saved or money you've put into accounts, life insurance policies even, and no one knows that you have it. So you pass away and your family has no way of accessing it because they don't even know about it. So that list of everything that you have, insurance policies, retirement accounts, bank accounts, what financial institution and approximately how much is in that account is really important to leave with your family. And there are certain generations who don't want to give this information out at all. They don't want anyone knowing about their stuff. So you can put it on documents. We have a thumb drive that we use where all of this information is stored with the access of, we use the last 4 digits of your social security number, but it's part of your estate plan. So your family knows what they're actually supposed to be pulling together and distributing after you've passed away. So that record is very important. The intangible assets that you transfer, that is also really important. It's really the legacy component of your estate plan. So the things that are really important to you, the family stories, the things that you've learned over the years, the things that you value about your children, those things you really want to communicate to them. I always say to people, no one's going to leave your will or your trust on their nightstand to remember you by. These are the kind of things they want to remember you by. A story that you've shared on a video, something you've written in a letter, something like this that you've done to really pass that legacy along. It is a little tough to do, I will tell you that. It took me years to do my legacy interview. It's part of the process of what we do in our estate plans is have you do a legacy interview that we record. It took me years to do it because I kept getting too emotional, and then one day I said to my team, we're doing it now. I don't feel emotional at all, let's do it. I still got emotional, but it is such a valuable thing, and just verbalizing those things that you want to pass on changes how you live your life. It is a really powerful thing to do, to just physically sit there and say, this is the thing I value about my child and that I want to make sure you know about yourself and that you continue doing. You keep drawing those things out of that person as you continue to live, so it's a really powerful thing. Okay. Make sure I'm staying in line with these. And you see how I'm getting off notes, which is never a good thing. Okay, so the next one should be even before, yeah, that's it. Okay, so guardianship designation for minor kids. This is another thing that is usually missing in traditional estate plans. Usually guardianship is only dealt with in a will. But if you think about this, say you're driving down the Beltway, you're on date night with your spouse, your kids are at home with the babysitter, and you get into an accident on the Beltway. Say you do not pass away, you're in the hospital though with your spouse for months. What happens with your child? What happens when the police go to the home and say the parents are not coming home tonight, they're in the hospital, totally, messed up, they can't speak? Is that babysitter prepared to do what needs to be done? The guardianship designations that are traditionally just in your will only govern what happened after you've passed away. So in this scenario, nothing can even be done with the guardian you've named there. It only affects after you've passed away and you haven't passed away. So what we have created in my firm is a kids protection plan where it basically lays out the guardianship documents that are needed for your current family members or friends who you would want taking care of your kids if something like that happened. We have temporary guardianship forms for the person who can just pick up your kids if you're in an accident and just can't pick them up from school. That person who's going to just hold your child until the primary guardian arrives, and primary guardianship directives. What if you're out of town on a vacation and COVID hits and you get stuck on a cruise ship? I was so panicked for the people on those cruise ships because the whole time I'm thinking, what if they have kids at home? What's happening with school? So if you don't have these documents in place, it can be a really big mess for your family and friends to try to deal with. But if you have the legal documents already there so that your family can say to the school, here's enrollment for this semester, the family cannot get out of wherever they are. Or the parents are in the hospital and can't communicate this to you. Or your child breaks their arm and the guardian needs to take them to the hospital, but they don't have any legal documentation to sign. We also have a medical power of attorney for your children. So all of these things are really important to have in place. The will does not govern all of that. It only governs it after you've passed away. So it's important to make sure these are in place. Next slide. Durable power of attorney. This is one of the other documents you need to make sure you have. This is a document that's only valid while you're alive. It basically says who's in charge of handling my finances if I'm in that scenario, if I'm in the hospital for days or for months. This is the person who can write checks from your account, who can open or close Facebook accounts, who can contact utilities, who can handle your cell phone. If you've ever tried to do that for a friend or a family member without a legal documentation saying that you have the authority to do it, you know you're hitting an immediate roadblock from the frontline person who answers the phone at Verizon or wherever else. The durable power of attorney is what gives you the legal authority to do this. Otherwise, you're asking your family and friends to commit mail fraud, bank fraud, forgery, pretending they're you to get things done. You don't want to put them in that position. The next document is your Advanced Healthcare Directive. So you can go to the next slide. The Advanced Healthcare Directive is basically the medical version of the power of attorney. And it specifies who's going to handle your medical decisions if you're incapacitated. This was really highlighted with the pandemic where families weren't able to go into the hospital when they dropped off somebody with COVID. The person couldn't speak, they were intubated. Unless you found somebody on the phone, a nice nurse or something who was going to give you information, you were totally in the dark until end of life. And then the doctors can speak with any interested persons about what to do in terms of life support. So if you have that one family member who's like, no, they wouldn't want to have this done, and they go against what everyone else is saying, you now have a situation where a doctor has to get a court involved to move forward with what to do. So the goal is you have everything spelled out in a document saying who's in charge of medical decisions if I can't make them, and here's what they should do. So they then have just the honor of carrying out your wishes rather than guessing at what you want to have done, feeling guilty later on. These are the things you want to take care of when you have the capacity to do so. Our next slide should be your last will and testament. Pretty much everyone has heard of the will. Most people think this is all you need, which is not the case that we've talked about before. A will does go through probate, but what it is useful for is designating who you want in charge of that probate process and what you want to have happen with your assets. So it's kind of the minimum level estate planning document you would have in place. Again, because it's going through probate, you're also involving the court in that process. So usually we have, the next slide, a trust involved in your estate plan. So the trust is what eliminates probate altogether. If you have a trust, usually the kind of will you have is a pour-over will, which just pours things into the trust that you have forgotten to put in the trust in the first place. So ideally, the will is really not supposed to be doing anything. The trust, ideally, is a separate entity that you're creating when you are creating a trust agreement. It's a legal document that you put in place. Again, this is not something you want to be doing on your own, because the goal is you transfer all of your assets into the name of the trust that you control. So if you're transferring your assets, you want to make sure this document is doing what you think it's doing, it's drafted correctly. You are trustee of your trust, and we can go to the next slide about who's involved in how a trust works. So the people involved, you can go to the next slide. The people involved would be the grantor, which is you. That's the person who creates the trust with their assets. You then have also a trustee. The trustee is the person who manages the assets on your behalf. You're the trustee of your trust until you're incapacitated or have passed away. So you're the one who's managing the assets. The successor trustee is the person you say, this person's going to step into my shoes if I become incapacitated or after I passed away, so that they then can manage those assets for me. That's the big key why assets avoid probate if you use a trust. You've already said who's going to be governing everything. You've already put things in the name of this entity that isn't going to pass away, so it completely avoids the court process. You also have beneficiaries of your trust, and those are the people who have the benefit of the assets that you put into the trust. That's also you when you're dealing with a revocable living trust. You're the beneficiary of your house and your bank accounts, all the things you put in. You manage it for your benefit. And then after you've passed away, you can name successor beneficiaries who inherit from you, from your trust. And similar to what Renee said, the rich have been doing this for many, many years. This is how they avoid spending all sorts of money in court. And then you have the strange scenarios where you have a celebrity who just doesn't do this at all, and that's why we know all about their affairs when they don't do any kind of estate planning and it ends up in probate. Prince was one who I just to this day cannot figure out why he did not have a trust, because he is the messiest state known to man. But that's the method that's used for the rich who are actually putting things in order. But it's also something that isn't just for the rich. The criteria that we recommend to our clients, if you have either minor children or real estate, so if you own your home or are buying your home, those are two baseline reasons that you need to have a trust rather than just a will. Because you can't avoid the probate process for that house without the trust, and you don't want your kids inheriting at 18 without the trust. Sorry. I do that all the time. I forget to hold it up where you can actually hear me. Okay. Let me make sure I'm on track with all the info I want to make sure you get. So let's go to the irrevocable and revocable. So Renee talked about this a little bit. You can have either a revocable or an irrevocable trust. We call the irrevocable trust a legacy trust, the revocable our family trust. Pretty much most estate plans are going to have a family trust component. The legacy trust is used depending on how many assets you have and how you want to protect them. You can use a legacy trust. Think of it, I have the picture of the chest down there. Think of a legacy trust as a closed chest. You put assets in it, and then you close it and lock it, and you give the key to a trustee, somebody that you trust to manage those assets for you. The benefit of that, it takes assets out of your estate and your direct control, so that for things like Medicaid qualification, if you don't want to spend all of your assets or spend them down to have Medicaid pay for long-term care, you put them in an irrevocable trust and you can qualify for Medicaid to pay for things instead of you spending all of your assets. You have to be down to $2,500 in assets in order for Medicaid to pay for your long-term care. And long-term care costs in this area are about $10,000 per month. So it's a huge amount of money. If you don't plan for it, you can end up in a scenario where you've spent all of the money that you've put aside for your family on a nursing home. Let's go to the Next slide. One of the other things you can use irrevocable trust for are land trust. You can use that for primary residences. You can also use it for investment properties. There are some scenarios where an LLC can't be used because of how the bank wants to finance things, but a trust can be used instead in order to get the asset out of your direct name, and for privacy reasons. Privacy trusts are a huge thing. The more assets you get under your name, the bigger target you are for people who want to take those assets from you. So trust can be used for privacy reasons as well. Offshore trusts are used a lot for asset protection. And again, all of these things are used depending on the size of estate that you're dealing with in terms of irrevocable trust. The revocable trust, though, is pretty much standard for most estate plans. So our next slide. So let's look at some of the benefits of living trust really quickly. We talked about one of the big ones, which is that it avoids probate, avoids it altogether. It also allows you to control how things are distributed to your children or other beneficiaries. So that scenario with the minor kids who are under 18, what most families who have a trust do will say you can have distributions made to your kids or for your kids' benefit up to whatever age you determine. So your trustee can pay for their health care, their school, all of their basic needs. And then when they turn a certain age, like 25, they can get a third of the assets you've left for them. And then at 30, another third. And then at 35, another third. So you can spread it out over time, whatever ages you determine, whatever percentages you determine. You can also require that they meet with a financial advisor or take Dave Ramsey's financial piece, one of those types of courses, before they get a lump sum distribution. So it can make sure that they're not going to mismanage those assets once they get it. Spreading it out also does that. So you can really take control over how the assets are going to be distributed to those beneficiaries. If you have beneficiaries with special needs, you have to be very careful not to distribute lump sums to them, either by accident through a life insurance or retirement account or just passing away without any plan, because they can lose the benefits that they're getting if they get these lump sums. So the way to do that is to have special needs provisions built into your trust so it doesn't go into their direct hands. Your trustee is managing it for them. So that's really important to know. Next slide, some of the other benefits. You can provide asset protection for your adult beneficiaries. So say by the time you pass away and your kids inherit from your estate, they're in their 40s and they're going through a divorce. If you don't want that bequest that you're leaving to them to end up in the divorce or to end up in a lawsuit or a creditor issue or a tax issue, you can add in asset protection into your trust. It's specific language that allows them to leave what you leave to them in the name of your trust and take beneficial ownership of it. So they can either get monthly distributions, annual distributions, take that lump sum after the issue has passed, but they can control it based on what's going on at the time that they're due to inherit. You can also minimize and eliminate estate taxes, or at least delay it in some situations if you're way too high up in the threshold for estate tax elimination. But that's something that also can be done with a trust. It also reduces estate expenses, and a lot of people think, oh, this is going to be an expensive planning tool, but you're going to spend 4 times less the amount you would spend on probate if you do a correct estate plan. Probate is very, very expensive, and it's very time-consuming, like we talked about before. So having the proper plan in place is always going to be cheaper for your family. It also avoids multi-state probate. If you have, say, land you've inherited or property you've inherited from somebody, say, in North Carolina, and you live here in Maryland, you want to avoid probate in both of those jurisdictions. So putting those assets into the same trust will prevent probate in multiple jurisdictions. It also avoids adult guardianship proceedings for that same scenario we talked about. So you're driving down the Beltway, you get into an accident. You've already said in your trust what your successor trustee should do with your assets, which is to take care of you. So you avoid them having to go to court to get guardianship proceedings started to take care of you legally. You've already said what to do, and you have it in a legal format. Our next slide, which is about the legacy component of it. We talked a little bit about this before, but the key thing, I think, to communicate with legacy and estate planning is the fact that you have to do something. You can't sit in multiple seminars and read all about this and never actually put something in place because you haven't left a legacy. There are very easy ways to get this in place with an attorney within a month, and getting it actually done is the key important thing. And there are parts of this you can do on your own, like the list of assets. It's obviously incorporated into our estate planning process, but you can do that on your own. And doing the legacy component of it, where you actually record things to your family to communicate to them the important things that you want them to remember, that's also something you can do on your own. So those are all things you want to, I hope the key thing to communicate or that you take away from is actually doing something so that you have this in place and you're not just, depending on Maryland's laws to take control, because as you've already heard, those will not be effective. All right, so next steps, you can go to the next slide. So we went over, I think, pretty much most of these. The list of assets, I would recommend not spending a ton of time on that if you're hiring an attorney, which you should do, because they will have ideally their own format for getting this information from you. So you don't want to spend months and months creating this Excel spreadsheet of everything you have and then have to reproduce that when you go to the attorney. But this is something you can start gathering, things like your statements and so forth, so that you're ready to proceed. Deciding, let me lift this up again so I can see this. Deciding who you want in important roles. So who you want as guardian for your kids, who you want as your successor trustee, who you want handling medical decisions if you can't. All of those things you can decide ahead of time, ahead of your consultation with an attorney, so that you're ready to proceed with an estate plan. The beneficiaries and thinking about how you want to leave assets to them. So part of the fun part of doing estate planning as an attorney is dealing with specific families, and every family has a different dynamic. And you have children who are good with savings, you have other children who love to spend, like the child I have, and you have different family goals and different things you really want to be leaving as the legacy. Some families want to focus on, it sounds like a lot of the families here, on businesses and being entrepreneurs, and that can be built into your estate plan in the way that you leave assets to your kids. So thinking about the things that are important to you and how you want to leave them to the next generation is one of the things you can do as a next step in preparing. And then setting up an appointment with an attorney. Because again, I don't recommend ever doing any of these things online or by yourself. So next slide. The things you want to be looking for when you are hiring an attorney, you want to make sure you're creating a personalized plan for your loved ones. This is something that is very key for, I think, especially African American families, because a lot of times if you go to a big firm of certain types, they will immediately say to you, oh, you just need a will. And that is specifically designed so that your family is coming back to them for probate, which is a much more expensive process. So it's really important that you're personalizing it, that you have somebody you can trust who's doing this, and that you're capturing that part of the process is capturing your family's legacy. Bottom line, you should be gaining peace of mind at the end of this process. You should be walking out of your attorney's office feeling a weight lifted off. It always is a physical thing with our clients when they leave. Literally, you don't know the tension you're carrying around when you know something has to be done that you haven't done, and it's something big impacting your kids and family. So once you've done it and you've prepared this plan, you walk out with your estate plan in place, a weight should be lifted off of your shoulders and you should feel like, okay, it's prepared. So making sure that that is part of what is going on. And then we have a couple, you can go to the next slide. We also offer a discount if you are getting an estate plan with us after attending something like this, because you've gotten a lot of information that we share in our seminars that will save us time. So we pass that savings along to you. So there's a $250 discount, $250 discount off of your plan. If you are setting up a legacy, we call them legacy planning sessions. If you're setting that up within 2 weeks of listening to this when everything is fresh in your mind, we also eliminate the estate planning, planning session fee. So that's normally $750. So you can reference this seminar to be able to get that and take advantage of that. If you want to look up reputable firms in the area, I recommend avo.com or lawyers.com. Both of those have attorneys listed in the area. And once you start narrowing down your search, one of the things to do is to make sure you're looking at testimonials of attorneys, not just what they put on their website, but things like the Google testimonials that we can't control, what goes on there. So that's important to look at as well. And I think we covered the rest of that. That QR code is if you want to set up a planning session with us. And the next slide has a QR code for a webinar or a video that we did with scenarios. So if you're somebody who needs practical examples to really follow these type of concepts, this video is really helpful. My associate attorney, Melody, went through a bunch of scenarios in real life type of situations of how these principles get applied. So that's something you can look at if you're interested in doing that as well. And then our next slide should be for questions. I think Renee will come back up and we can field some questions. My pleasure. Thank you. Any questions?
There's a question back there.
Yes. Hi, my pleasure.
Okay. Okay.
You're on tape.
Say hi to the camera.
Oh, hi. Okay. Okay. So for a person that doesn't have any access, it's open enrollment time now at most companies. So I upped my life insurance to $500,000.
Excellent.
Now, there are five persons that I have as beneficiary. A friend that I trust that'll take care of my grandchildren while I'm alive and dead.
Okay.
My two daughters, a little bit of money here or there, a nonprofit organization. Would it be, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so I have them designated, and that one person, because the grandchildren are underage, is leaving a letter for her. This is what I want you to do for them, and trusting that she would do it. So it wouldn't make any sense to have a trust or a lawyer. True or false?
False for so many reasons. One of the things they teach you in law school is to think of all the worst case scenarios, and it happens like that as I get stories like this. So that scenario is wrought with issues. I'll give you an example of a client that came in with one of the primary issues. So final expenses, for example. I've had clients who have left a family member a lump sum in life insurance, and their goal was that this person would take care of the final expenses. I've literally had other family members come in for probate cases who said they took that money and went on vacation, and they refused to pay for any final expenses. So money changes people. The person that you trust, I'm sure, is somebody you could trust. But what happens if she passes away before you?
Right.
Or what happens if she passes away while your grandchildren are still minors? And that money now is going to her family members through probate, so it's going to get diminished because the probate cost and delay. So the trust will prevent that scenario, that one scenario we talked about. It'll also make sure that the entity that you're leaving money to, what if that entity goes out of existence? You can say in your trust, I want it to go to this entity, and if this entity is not in existence, the successor entity. Like sometimes a pastor will leave a church and the church gets a new name.
Okay.
Or they're still in the church and the church gets a new name.
Okay.
And now your estate plan has a beneficiary on a life insurance that they will not make those kind of judgment calls. It'll go through probate if it has any kind of difference between the entity name and what you've specified.
Okay.
So that would be one issue there. With your kids, same scenario as the friend. What if your kids have passed away, or what if they're facing something at the time that life insurance is supposed to pay out? Like they just had a car accident and insurance won't cover it, and they now have $1 million lawsuit waiting to get any assets that they get from you. So with life insurance, a check gets written out and it goes directly to the beneficiary, and whatever's going on in their life, it doesn't matter, they get that check.
Okay.
So it can be really dangerous. The trust prevents that and allows you to have all sorts of built-in provisions that will make sure it goes where you want it to go in the way you want it to go, and that it's protected. So the legacy that you're trying to leave is actually going to be what it's intended to be.
Okay, thank you. Just one last part of that.
Yes.
As far as the organization, so it's not a good idea just to have the name of the organization, but also successor,
Yeah.
correct? Got
Yeah, a good estate plan always has backups in place for every little thing.
Got it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Very good question.
Did you have a
Any other question? Yeah.
No, I was just going to comment also that, you know, with a life insurance, you have a beneficiary. So you're right, that money goes straight to her friend. So my concern is, like you said, what if the friend gets that lump sum of money and unfortunately doesn't do what you wanted them to do with it? And that happens. You know, I've been in business 29 years. I've had clients who passed away, and then their children or grandchildren may or may not use the money the way you want them to use it. So in that scenario, that's all written all over. You need a trust to kind of handle all the different things that you're trying to handle. You would need that. 'Cause
Thank
a life
you.
insurance company won't handle that stuff for you. They'll just cut a check.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm a Washingtonian. Every explanation you gave concerning the,
Maryland.
I don't know if, I don't know if it also affects Washington
It does.
residents.
So the intestacy laws for DC are very similar to Maryland. Instead of the half going to the parent or the children, it's a third for each of those scenarios. For the estate planning or the estate tax, in Maryland, it's you have to be over 5 million. In DC, the DC Council just changed it, I believe, to 4.9 million. So it's very similar, DC and Maryland's laws regarding estate planning.
Oh. My second question is about the infinite banking
Oh, okay. System, yeah.
system. Does it differ from the regular banking system, or how is it done?
How is it different?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very great question. And that's one of the scenarios I talked about, that most people, when they're funding a big purchase item, either they save in the bank or they borrow money. So there are pros and cons, like Soren said, to everything. So if you put the money in the bank, that's great. You have access to all that money right away. But we talked about, the pastor said that money's growing at what? 0.1%. Yeah. So you're really not getting any interest in the money. And then the little bit of interest that you do make, also you have to pay taxes on that. And, you know, if you passed away, something happens, you put $500 in the bank, and that intention is you're saving for a business or for college, and you die after that first $500 deposit in the bank, that's all your daughter or your grandchild would get. You put that in the infinite banking system, $500 in the example we showed, that young lady dies the next month, that's $125,000 that goes to the family, so that, you know, what you want can still continue to happen, whether it be college or starting a business. Also, with the infinite banking system, it's self-completing. So a lot of these policies, the whole life and index universal life, if you get sick and can't work, and most of you are in the medical field, you know, you have patients who maybe haven't worked for a long period of time. With those policies, you could set it up where after 6 months, if that person can't work because they're injured or sick, the life insurance company will still fund that policy, not just the insurance, but the money you're putting in to save. They'll still pay it for 2 years, 5 years, or until you pass away. So definitely some big differences between the two different ways of saving money for a goal.
Okay, my understanding now is it under the specification of insurance, or?
Yes, to build the infinite banking system, we have to properly structure either a whole life policy or index universal life policy. So, but the difference is, from traditional policies, most times you can't access the cash right away. So usually when you set up a life insurance, it may take 5 to 6 years before you can touch any of the money. But the way we would properly structure this policy is so that you could touch the majority of the money, like 80, 85% of that cash right away, and with a whole life, you get a guaranteed rate of return. Right now, it's giving 3%. So you know, guaranteed for the life that you have that policy, you're going to get 3% on that money. And then, like I said, when you're borrowing money to start your business or for college, that money, even though you've taken it out of the policy, or you know, you're thinking I took it out of the policy, it's still getting that 3% rate of return. So that $10,000 is still getting $300. That $100,000 is still getting $3,000 every year, even though you've actually taken the money, spent it, and used it for your business. And then, like I said, you have no payment structure. You could pay it how you want, and you don't even have to pay it back. If you don't, when you pass, they'll just subtract the money you borrowed minus the interest. Very, very flexible. So there are a lot of differences between a regular bank and the infinite banking concept.
Okay. On that note, you said we can register with $500 to be.
Yeah, it depends on your budget. So I just use an example. I have a client who's a nurse, that's how much she's doing, but you could do $200 a month. I have a client who wants to start a food truck business. He's like, I can afford $200 a month, but I want to set it up where if my business is doing very well, I could dump money into it. So he said, I don't want to be only obligated to put $200 a month into it, but I want to be able to put an extra $5,000 a year if my food truck business goes well. So everybody's situation is different, and that's why even like her, we have to sit down with you and look at your specific situation and build it based on your budget and what your goals are.
Okay. So that being said, because there are some other financial institutions that also talk about having you to put your money with them and take out some money at a specific time. So it's also different because like some of them that was introduced to me, if you put some certain amount, within a year you get some money out of it. But your principal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What exactly? What specific instrument? Because there's so many. Okay. It could be a CD, 401k, a Roth IRA.
Like the one for Novatech, you put in your money grows in interest rate, but you can take out the equity at a point, but your principal still stays. So.
Is that through a life and that? We would have to.
No, it's out of insurance system.
Okay, so it's similar.
Okay. Then the second question I have is about this insurance. I have my life insurance with AARP.
Yes.
They be writing me that I should change to permanent life insurance because when I get to 80,
thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
I will not be able to earn whatever it is. I was like, I don't
So
have that difference.
You have
term policy.
Term policy.
A lot of people don't.
You don't have insurance if that's the case.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that when you buy an AARP policy, it's a renewable. You know, it's a term to age 80, and after age 80, you lose the policy. So what they're trying to do is get you to convert it to a whole life so that you have the policy to age 100. And that's one of the things I do is also do a free complimentary review of your current policy because a lot of times people don't even know that they have a term. They don't know that at the end of the term or either at age 80, either you lose the policy, some policies reduce in half, some policies reduce to 10%, and just because you may not have the experience with looking at the policies, you're just thinking, oh, I have a $100,000 policy till I die. Well, it's not till you die. It's till age 80, and then you have nothing. And then people have like Prime America, A.L. Williams, which is fine if that's what you can afford and what's affordable, you get a term. But you need to understand that at the end of the term, that price is going to go up so high that you're going to have to drop it because you can't afford it. But people in their mind, all they see in the policy is age 95. So they're like, oh, Renee, I have a policy to age 95. My A.L. William or Prime America is to age 95. Yes, you can keep it to age 95, but that $50 a month you're paying is only $50 for 20 years. After that, it's going to go to $500 a month. Then the next year it could be $600. Then it could be $2,000. Then it could be $3,000 a month. So you have to really understand how your policy works, and that's why you need an expert to kind of review your policy and go over exactly what you have with experienced eyes. So, but that's something we could talk about. I can help you with that.
I just want to say, it looks like my sister here has a bunch of questions. And we have the green form here.
Yes, please fill out the green
we
form.
should fill out, and they are available to do consultation with us. I'm going to get one myself, so I've already filled out mine. Yes.
The benefit of the consultation is that it's geared to your specific situation.
Right.
So I don't know if you have a longer questionnaire you do ahead of time, but you'll have an opportunity to give the person your information, and they can actually gear, because there's so much information, gearing it to your specific family situation is what's needed and necessary to make it make sense to you. Otherwise, you just hear all of these scenarios and it's like, I don't know what applies. So yeah, a consultation is really
I also want us
ideal.
to know that we also have, if you have questions for Michelle, she's also here as well. And also, if you, I know the food is smelling.
I know.
I'm hungry. And flu shot if you need it.
Vaccines.
People are upstairs as well, and the COVID test.
Yes.
Sorry, my last question goes to my sister. It has to do with the diabetic treatment. Is it advisable one goes to the expertise or the specialist that treats diabetic instead of the regular doctor?
So you can go, I guess depending on your case, you can go to your primary care provider, and if needed, then they can refer you.
Get the mic so that people can hear you.
I was saying, depending on your case, you can start with your primary care provider, and then if needed, they can refer you to a specialist.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else has a question?
Hi, Michelle, how are you? This is for you. Okay, you walk into a doctor and it tells you you have a time bomb, cholesterol high, blood pressure high, and sugar. What will you do in that situation?
What do you mean? Like,
As far as treatment. Cholesterol high, sugar high, and the blood pressure.
right.
And the pressure is hitting your aorta, where it gets swollen.
I can send you those resources if you would like for me to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, I have a. Right. So we're going to share her card so that everyone will get it. So my question is about the trust. Okay. Say someone that a homeowner who doesn't, without any trust, if they have a catastrophic illness, they might be forced to go to a nursing home. So when they're going to the nursing home, they might be forced to sell that house in order to finance their stay in the nursing home. So my question is, if they have a trust, what difference would that make?
That's a really good question. I didn't get into a ton of details about the irrevocable trust, but that's primarily used, well, not primarily. One of the reasons you can get an irrevocable trust is for long-term care planning. So if you do that 5 years before having the need to go into a nursing home, and you have it structured properly in the irrevocable trust, Medicaid will completely ignore that house as part of your assets, along with any other things you put into the irrevocable trust. So it allows you to get down to that $2,500 amount that they allow for qualification so that Medicaid starts paying for the nursing home instead of having your family liquidate that house or spend down your other assets. So it's a planning tool that's used really effectively for Medicaid planning. You just have to do it in advance of having the need. And having also a trustee that you can trust. Because remember, with an irrevocable trust, you're not the primary trustee. You name somebody else who is trustee managing the assets for your purpose. You can still live in your house. They can still purchase things for you with accounts that you put into that trust. But they are managing it, which usually what we recommend with young families is long-term care insurance. Or a life insurance policy that's like a hybrid where if you don't use the long-term care, it'll convert to a life insurance policy because that will also pay for long-term care instead of needing the irrevocable trust because you do lose a level of control with the irrevocable trust.
Okay, thank you.
Not with the revocable trust, but with the irrevocable trust you do.
Right.
Actually, it's good that you brought that up because there are, thanks for actually bringing that up, because Life insurance can definitely help with that, and the new type of policies have what's called a chronic illness rider, and it basically says that if you can't do 2 of the ADLs, that's the policy that I have set up for myself. So if I can't bathe, feed, dress, toilet, or take care of myself physically, I can then use my death benefit to help pay for my long-term care expenses, whether that be pay someone to come into my household and take care of me, or to pay for a long-term care facility. But let's say I never end up using the long-term care piece of it. When I pass away, my family gets that $500,000. And I also have the cash value for the infinite banking system. So not only do I have the cash and the money that could be used to fund a business, buy a car, pay for kids' education, if I need long-term care services, I can then turn my death benefit to pay for long-term care services. If I don't use the long-term care services, at some point when I pass, my family gets that $500,000. So that's a good point. That's one of the ways to help, with the long-term care cost. Does anybody have any other questions? I know that jollof rice is smelling good.
Just a comment. Praise God.
Thank you, Pastor.
Just a comment. It is, most of the time when people are talking about insurance and planning, it's good to plan while you are healthy and alive. Amen? Don't wait until it is too late. God can't plan for us. God already has a plan and a purpose. The plan and the purpose he has for us is this kind of opportunity we have right now to have people come here and educate us. Amen? So what I'm going to advise everybody here is that before you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you one catastrophic information, because even with the things we are talking about here, when they look at you, and because you have to qualify, when they underwrite you and they see that your health is going downhill, you're going to pay for it. It's costly. And everything like so that the reason I'm saying this is that nobody will, put a different spin out of what they have given you. If you put 500, if you start with 500, you are not going to get, you have to build it up. Hello? You got to leave it. You plant a seed, you're going to wait until the seed germinates. I don't think you're saying when they put 500 now, except you, depending on the life insurance portion, that's the only one you get. Or not you, your beneficiaries have. Now, if you wait for long and build it for 5 years, it accumulates. Part of the ones that is not going to insurance grows. So don't expect it to grow like with fertilizer. Praise God. Don't go there tomorrow after you put in. Because the reason I'm telling people this is, things are always lost in translation. You put your 500 and then the next day you say, I want to buy a house. Praise the Lord. I need you to give me 500,000. And then when the person tells you, that's not what we talked about, problem will come. So please, I want us to shape it, so that people know.
Pastor, and that's why I tried to show the example, and the example was important to show because he's right. And that can happen. Things can get lost in translation where someone will come to me later and say, oh, we talked about this. And that's why I showed in the example that if that person died immediately, they're covered for $125,000. But the cash, that $26,500 is after 5 years of putting $500 a month in consistently for 5 years and getting a guaranteed 3%. So if that person ends up putting less in or more, all those numbers change. But it shows that you don't, with the whole life, you do have access to a portion of your money after 30 days, but not all of it, because there is a life insurance component, and you have to, like you said, it's a seed, it has to grow. It's not fertilizer where it's gonna grow immediately. It does take time. So that's why when I spoke to you, I was saying like 5 years out or 10 years out. So it's not so that you can invest in your business in 6 months. It does take a little bit of time, 3 years, 5 years. But the way we properly structure it is so that it's not like traditional whole life or index universal life policies where you have to wait 10 years to touch it. That's why you have to go to the right person, so we can structure it so that you can access the money sooner rather than later. But not overnight. It doesn't grow overnight. So thank you so much for bringing that point, so there's no miscommunication. And they say, oh, Renee said I'm going to have $1 million, pay off all my kids' college, buy a house and everything tomorrow. No, that's not what I said. It's just a different way of planning for these goals, short/long term. Thank you. And we do have the cards that were passed out, so you can reach out to each of us so we can actually properly design your plan. She can work on your trust and setting up a will and estate planning. And we do have these green sheets where you could check off and kind of write down about your specific situation if you have questions or comments, and then I'll collect those from you. I'm going to hang around and get some jollof rice so you can pass that to me while I'm eating my yummy food. Thank you so much, Pastor, for having us, and Michael and Chika. We appreciate you having us here today.
Thank you so much.
Please announce for the shots. We are still here till 2. Those who need to be checked out.
Yes.
If you know you have, your blood, you want to know your blood sugar, right, and all that, your pressure, your blood pressure. There are people waiting to help you.
Okay. So we heard that, right? So if you need your shot upstairs, if you can't go upstairs, we'll make room for them to come down here and give it to you as well, if you can't climb upstairs. And then please sit tight so that we can pass the food out to you. Okay? Thank you so much. If you've completed your green forms, I will come around and pick them up now.
Hold on, please. Don't go yet. There are people who have questions, but they are watching us remotely. So don't think you were. Yeah, somebody was calling me. That's true. Yes. Yeah, but I didn't.
I forgot there are people online watching.
Yes.
Yeah, there are people.
So they have their own questions.
Let me see. So call.
A sister said, watching from Las Vegas, this is all great information for your area, but if you do not live in that area, do you have any suggestion on who to talk with in other areas, like in other states?
Yes, Yes, I'm only licensed in Maryland and DC, so I can't advise about Vegas, but you can go on, one website is estateplanning.com for estate planning attorneys. Another would be avo.com, which is avvo.com, lawyers.com. All of those would be resources where they list the attorney by practice specialty as well as location. So you usually are able to plug in your zip code to find somebody close to you. Trust rules are very consistent throughout the U.S. The intestacy laws will vary from state to state. So, and estate taxes for the state will vary as well.
Awesome.
And when it comes to life insurance and the infinite banking system, the good thing about me is that I'm actually licensed and can get licensed in any state. So I do business in North Carolina, Delaware, Texas. So basically, if I have someone's interested in my help and needs my help and services, I just get licensed in that state and I'm able to do that business in that state. As long as it is within the continental U.S., I'm able to help them.
Awesome. Thank you. And there are a lot of thank you. This is great information. Knowledge is power. We really appreciate everything. Thank you so much. These are some of the comments online.
Oh,
Thank you
wonderful.
so much.
Thank you for inviting us, because that's one of our mission, is to educate and to empower and to spread this information. Like we said, the rich and the wealthy have been doing it for years, but everybody needs it. Doesn't matter whether you make, whatever you make and whatever your asset class is, we're here to help, and you need all these financial instruments. So thank you for having us.
We really appreciate. Count me in as one of your. Thank you so much.